The night descends, and with it, a promise of quiet. The world outside grows still. The house settles into silence. Yet within your mind, a storm begins to rage. Unfinished conversations play out on a loop. Shadows of past regrets dance with anxieties about a future that has not yet arrived. There is a weight, a palpable heaviness that pins you to the mattress, denying you the simple, profound peace of sleep that your body so deeply craves. You are not alone in this struggle, this feeling of being stuck, of being mentally ensnared while the world sleeps, is not a personal failing. It is a fundamental part of the human experience in our modern world. A quiet epidemic of restless minds. We are caught in an invisible net of our own making, a net woven from the threads of attachment. We cling to what we desire. We grasp at the person we think we should be. We hold tight to our ideas of what happiness and security must look like. It is this constant, subtle act of holding on that becomes a chain, binding our minds and breeding a quiet, persistent suffering. But there is a way to loosen these chains, a path to untangle the knots. It is not a quick fix or a magic pill, but a profound shift in perception, guided by the timeless wisdom of Buddhist teachings. This journey we are about to embark on is not a religious sermon, but an invitation to explore the very root of our restlessness. What the Buddha called Dukkha, the suffering that arises from tanha, the thirst or craving of the mind. It is a gentle exploration of letting go, of learning how to release our grip, so that we may finally find the genuine peace that awaits us. Beginning with the simple act of falling asleep, the clock on the wall is a silent witness, its hands creeping towards 1, then 2, then 3 in the morning. Your body is heavy with fatigue, a deep, cellular craving for rest. Yet your mind is an illuminated city that refuses to sleep. It's a landscape of buzzing thoughts, of highways carrying worries from tomorrow back to yesterday, of street corners where regrets linger and anxieties whisper. Each time you feel yourself drifting, a thought hooks you and pulls you back to the surface, back to the state of weary alertness. This experience, this chasm between a tired body and a wired mind, is one of the most common and frustrating forms of modern suffering. We call it insomnia, stress, or anxiety. But in the lexicon of the Buddha, this state has a name that is far more encompassing and profound. It is called Dukkha. The word dukkha, from the ancient Pali language, is often translated simply as suffering. But this translation doesn't capture its full texture. It is not just the acute pain of a wound or the sharp grief of a loss. Dukkha is also the subtle, pervasive background hum of dissatisfaction that runs through our lives. It is the feeling of being slightly off key, the sense that something is not quite right, even when everything on the surface appears to be fine. It is the inherent friction of existence, the restlessness that prevents us from ever feeling completely and utterly at peace. To truly understand why our minds race at midnight, we must first understand the different shades and flavors of dukkha. The Buddha described dukkha in 3 distinct, yet interwoven, ways. The first is the most obvious dukkha, the suffering of suffering. This is the pain we all recognize. It is the headache that throbs in your temples, the sting of a harsh word, the ache of a lonely heart, the anguish of losing someone you love. It is sickness, old age, and death. This form of dukkha is unavoidable, a given condition of having a human body and a human heart in a world of constant change. It is real, and it is painful, and no amount of wisdom can make a physical injury not hurt. The second type is more subtle, and it begins to explain why even pleasant moments can feel unsettled. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. Have you ever been in a moment of pure joy, a beautiful sunset, a perfect meal, a loving embrace, and felt a tiny, almost imperceptible shadow of sadness? That shadow is the whisper of impermanence. It's the subconscious knowledge that this beautiful moment cannot last. The pleasure is fleeting, and our desire to freeze it, to hold on to it forever, creates a subtle tension, a form of dukkha. We suffer not because the moment is bad, but because it is good, and we know it will end. This anxiety about the future ending of a present pleasure is a constant, low-grade stressor that we carry with us. It's the reason we can't fully relax into happiness, because a part of our mind is already bracing for its departure. This leads us to the third and most profound form, the one that truly explains the restless mind at midnight. It is called sankhara dukkha. This is the suffering of conditioned existence. It is the fundamental unsatisfactoriness of a life built upon ever-changing components. Imagine you are trying to sleep in what seems to be the most comfortable bed in the world. The mattress is soft. The pillows are perfectly plump. The room is dark and quiet. The temperature is just right. Everything, by all accounts, should be perfect for sleep. And yet, you toss and turn. Unable to settle, you search and search for the source of your discomfort, until finally, you discover it underneath all the layers of luxurious padding. There is a single, tiny pea. This tiny pea is sankhara dukkha. It is the background hum of inherent unease that comes from being a self that is not solid, a mind that is not stable, in a world that is not permanent. During the day, with all its distractions and noises, we might not notice the pea. We are too busy, but in the deep silence of the night, when all other sounds have faded away, the pea becomes a boulder. Its presence is all we can feel. The racing thoughts, the replayed conversations, the planning and the worrying. These are the mind's frantic attempts to find and remove that pea. The mind believes that if it can just solve this one problem, or figure out that one uncertainty, or undo that one mistake, then it can finally rest. But it is chasing a phantom, because the pea is not a single problem to be solved. It is the very nature of our conditioned mind. This is sankhara dukkha, the baseline anxiety of an existence that is constantly in flux, constantly dependent on causes and conditions outside of our full control. Your sleeplessness is not just a nuisance, it is a direct, experiential lesson in the nature of dukkha. Your mind, in its frantic search for a stable place to land, is demonstrating the very truth the Buddha spoke of 26 centuries ago. To see this clearly can feel disheartening at first, but what the Buddha offered was not a philosophy of pessimism, but a diagnosis of profound hope. He presented his core teaching in the form of a medical framework, the Four Noble Truths, a clear and practical path from illness to wellness. The first truth is what we have just explored, the truth of the existence of dukkha. This is the brave acknowledgement of the symptom. It is looking squarely at our restless mind and saying, I see you. I see this unease. I will not pretend it isn't here. This step alone is an act of immense kindness to ourselves. Instead of berating ourselves for not being able to sleep, we simply acknowledge the reality of the discomfort. The second noble truth, which we will explore, is the truth of the origin of dukkha. The Buddha states that this unease has a cause. It doesn't arise from nowhere. It is not a punishment. It has a specific, identifiable root. This is a revolutionary idea, because if there is a cause, then we are no longer helpless victims of our own minds. The third noble truth is the truth of the cessation of dukkha. This is the hopeful prognosis. The Buddha declared that because dukkha has a cause, its cessation is possible. An end to this frantic striving, a genuine and lasting peace, is attainable. The fire of restlessness can be cooled. And finally, the fourth noble truth is the truth of the path to the cessation of dukkha. This is the prescription. The Buddha laid out a clear, practical, step-by-step training of mind and heart, known as the Noble Eightfold Path, that anyone can follow to move from restlessness to peace. So, as you lie there in the dark, feeling the churn of your own mind, try to reframe the experience. You are not failing at sleeping. You are being given a private, intimate lesson in the first noble truth. You are feeling the texture of reality. Acknowledging dukkha is not about dwelling on the negative. It is the opposite. It is an act of courage and radical honesty. It's like turning on the lights in a cluttered room for the first time. It might look messy, but now, finally, you can see where you are. You can see what you're working with. And only then can you begin to gently, compassionately, put things in order. You cannot find peace by pretending that unease doesn't exist. You find it by turning towards the unease with curiosity and courage, and whispering, "I see you." This is the first, essential step on the path to a truly peaceful night and a truly peaceful life. Now that we have bravely identified the symptom, this pervasive feeling of dukkha, our next step is to look for its cause. Where does this restlessness, this tiny pea under the mattress, actually come from? We have acknowledged the presence of dukkha, that undercurrent of unease that so often keeps us awake. We see that it's not a personal failure, but a fundamental condition described with profound clarity centuries ago. The next logical question, the question that holds the key to our freedom, is where does it come from? The Buddha's answer to this is both simple and revolutionary, and it is best explained through a powerful parable, the story of the second arrow. It is a teaching that, once truly heard, can fundamentally change your relationship with every difficulty you will ever face. Imagine a person walking through a field. Suddenly, without warning, they are struck by an arrow. There is a sharp, immediate, and undeniable pain. The arrow pierces their skin, and the sensation is intense. This, the Buddha said, is an unavoidable part of life. In our own lives, these first arrows are everywhere. They are the critical comment from a colleague, the unexpected bill in the mail, the headache that arrives at an inconvenient time, the disappointment when plans fall through, the pang of loneliness on a quiet evening. These are painful events. They happen. No one, not even the most enlightened master, is immune to the first arrows of existence. They are the dukkha we spoke of, the raw, physical and emotional pain that is part of the contract of being alive. Now, the Buddha asks us to observe what this person does next. After being struck by the first arrow, this ordinary, uninstructed person immediately reacts with a flurry of mental activity. They grieve, they wail, they beat their chest, they cry out, "Why me? What have I done to deserve this? This is a catastrophe. My life is ruined. This is terribly unfair." They become consumed by the story of the arrow. They obsess over who might have shot it, why it was shot, and what terrible consequences will now follow. In doing all of this, the Buddha explains, this person has just shot themselves with a second arrow. This second arrow is not made of wood and feathers. It is made of thought. It is forged in the fires of resistance, judgment, and fear, and the pain of this second arrow, the Buddha taught, is often 100 times greater than the pain of the first. This person now feels two pains, the physical pain from the initial wound, and the intense mental and emotional anguish from their own reaction to it. This self-created suffering is the second arrow. Now consider another person, a wise person, a student of the path. They too are walking through the field, and they too are struck by the first arrow. They feel the same sharp, immediate, physical pain. The first arrow hurts just as much. The wisdom of the path does not make you numb. However, this person's response is different. They feel the pain, but they do not immediately launch the second arrow. They do not fall into despair. They do not create a story of injustice. They do not catastrophize. They simply, with clear awareness, acknowledge the reality of the situation. A painful feeling has arisen in the body. There is pain. They tend to the wound, but they don't add the poison of mental proliferation. They feel the pain of one arrow, and one arrow only. This parable is not an ancient abstraction. It is a minute-by-minute map of our own minds. Think about your day. The first arrow might have been your child spilling juice on the clean floor right as you were rushing out the door. The initial flash of frustration is the first arrow's pain. The second arrow is the internal monologue that follows. He never listens. This is going to make me late. Now the whole day is ruined. I'm a terrible parent for getting so angry. The initial event was over in seconds. The suffering from the second arrow, from the story you told yourself about the event, can last for hours, souring your mood and creating a residue of resentment that you carry with you. Perhaps the first arrow was seeing a photo on social media of friends gathered together without you. The initial pang of being left out is the first arrow. The second arrow is the spiral of thoughts. They don't really like me. I'm always on the outside. There must be something wrong with me. I'll probably be alone forever. You have taken a fleeting, painful feeling and, with the power of your own mind, you have built it into a towering monument of personal inadequacy and despair. Now, consider how this plays out in the silence of the night. Why can't we sleep? It is rarely because of the first arrows. The day is done. The spilled juice is cleaned up. The social media feed has been closed. We are not suffering from the events themselves. We are suffering because we are lying in bed, in the dark, meticulously re-examining, reliving, and refiring the second arrows. Our minds become a battlefield where we endlessly reenact the day's injuries. We are not bleeding from the initial wounds. We are bleeding from the wounds we are continuing to inflict upon ourselves, moment by moment, with our own thoughts. the real source of our torment, the real thief of our peace, is not what happens to us, but what we tell ourselves about what happens to us. So, what is the alternative? How do we become the wise person who feels only one arrow? The answer lies in the space between the two arrows, between the initial impact and our habitual reaction. There is a tiny, precious gap. It may only be a fraction of a second long, but it exists. In that gap lies our entire potential for freedom. Mindfulness is the practice of learning to recognize and inhabit that gap. When the first arrow strikes, when you hear the critical word, feel the pang of fear, notice the wave of anger. Mindfulness invites you to pause, just for a moment, before you react. Instead of immediately launching into the story, you bring your awareness to the raw sensations in your body. What does this anger actually feel like? Is it a tightness in the chest, a heat in the face, a clenching in the stomach? You simply observe these sensations with a kind, non-judgmental curiosity. You don't have to like them. You just have to be willing to feel them, without adding the second arrow of, "This is bad. I shouldn't be feeling this." This is not suppression. It is not emotional bypassing. It is the opposite. It is a courageous willingness to feel the full, unadulterated energy of the first arrow, so that it can move through you without getting stuck. When you do this, you rob the second arrow of its fuel. The stories of blame and victimhood have nowhere to land. The fire of reaction has no oxygen. You feel the pain. Yes, but it is a clean pain. It arises. It is felt. And it passes. It does not become the sticky, toxic, long-lasting suffering that poisons our days and haunts our nights. Every time you choose to pause and breathe instead of immediately reacting, you are building the muscle of wisdom. You are training yourself to be the person who feels one arrow, not two. The peace we seek, especially the peace required for a good night's sleep, is found directly in this practice. It is found in our willingness to let the day's first arrows simply be what they are, without adding the unnecessary burden of the second. As we look more closely at this second arrow, we must ask, what is it made of? What is the potent, sticky substance that glues our minds to these painful reactions? It is a force that the Buddha identified as the primary source of our self-inflicted wounds. It is the force of attachment, of clinging, of grasping, our attachment to our reputation, our attachment to being right, our attachment to our vision of how life should be. It is this very grasping that we must now turn our gentle, curious attention to, for in understanding it, we can finally begin to lay down our weapons and let ourselves be at peace. We have seen how our suffering is not caused by life's painful events, the first arrows, but by our reaction to them, the second arrows we shoot at ourselves. We must now examine the substance of these second arrows. What is this sticky, potent, and painful material? In the language of the Buddha, this is called upadana, a word that translates as clinging, grasping, or attachment. And it is absolutely crucial, from the very beginning, that we understand what this attachment is and what it is not. In our modern language, the word attachment can have warm, positive connotations. We speak of the secure attachment between a parent and child as a foundation for a healthy life. We talk about forming attachments to our friends and our community. These are wholesome connections, but the Buddhist concept of upadana describes something very different. It is not the gentle, open-handed connection of love. It is the tight, fearful grip of a closed fist. True love, what in the Pali language is called metta, is an expansive and liberating force. It is the sincere wish for another being to be happy and free from suffering. Its nature is radiant. Like the sun shines on everyone and everything, the beautiful and the broken, without demanding anything in return. It does not say, "I will only shine on you if you face me." It simply gives its warmth freely. Metta is like this. It is an offering of goodwill without an invoice attached. It finds joy in the joy of others. It is a connection that fosters freedom. It says, "May you be happy." And it means it, whether that happiness involves you or not. This kind of love feels light, open, and boundless. Upadana, or clinging, is the very opposite. It is a transactional state of mind. It says, "I need you to make me happy." It says, "I need this situation to remain exactly as it is, so that I can feel secure." The focus shifts from the well-being of the other to the gratification of the self. While love is an open hand, upadana is a clenched fist, desperately trying to hold on to something, be it a person, a feeling, a memory, or an idea. And just as you cannot hold water by squeezing it, the very act of clinging ensures that peace and happiness will slip through your fingers. This kind of attachment feels constricted, anxious, and fragile. It is rooted not in generosity, but in a sense of inner lack. There is a powerful story that illustrates this difference. Imagine a mother who loves her child more than anything in the world. She holds her child in a deep embrace, wanting to protect them from all harm, to keep them safe and close. Her intention is born from love, but her own fear of loss, to her terror that something might happen to her child, causes her to tighten her grip. The embrace, meant to be a gesture of love, becomes a cage. She holds on so tightly that the child cannot breathe and begins to struggle. The mother's love, when poisoned by the fear and possessiveness of upadana, becomes a source of suffering for the very one she wishes to protect. This is the tragic nature of clinging. Even with the best intentions, it suffocates the life out of joy, both for ourselves and for others. The Buddha, with his physician-like precision, identified 4 primary ways in which we cling, 4 types of upadana that keep us bound to the wheel of restlessness. By seeing them clearly in our own lives, we can begin to loosen their grip. The first is kama upadana, the clinging to sensual pleasures. This is the most straightforward kind of attachment. It is our grasping at pleasant sights, sounds, smells, taste, and feelings. It's the addiction to the comfort of a favorite food, the endless scrolling for a pleasing image on our phone, the desperate search for the perfect song to make us feel better. When we try to sleep, this clinging runs rampant. We cling to the idea of what sleep should feel like: a deep, effortless, blissful state. We become attached to the idea of a perfectly silent room or a perfectly comfortable position. When reality fails to match our desire, when there is an annoying noise or a restless leg, we become agitated and frustrated. We are clinging so tightly to the concept of peaceful sleep that we actively prevent it from happening. The desire for the pleasant sensation becomes the very source of our suffering. The second is ditthiti upadana, the clinging to views and opinions. This is a far more subtle and often more violent, form of attachment. It is our desperate need to be right. It is the unwavering attachment to our political ideologies, our spiritual beliefs, our personal philosophies, and our judgments about others. At 2 o'clock in the morning, this is the engine that drives the endless courtroom dramas in our minds. We replay arguments, formulating the perfect rebuttal we should have used. We stew in righteous indignation about the state of the world or the actions of a colleague. We are so fiercely attached to our own narrative, our version of the truth, that we completely sacrifice our inner peace. The mind becomes a fortress, defending its views. And a fortress is a place under siege, not a place of rest. The third is silabhata upadana, the clinging to rites, rituals, and rules. In the Buddha's time, this referred to the empty belief that performing certain ceremonies or ascetic practices would automatically lead to liberation. Today, we see this in our rigid attachment to methods and routines, particularly our so-called wellness routines. We might develop an elaborate bedtime ritual, a specific type of tea, a 15-minute meditation, reading exactly 10 pages of a book, a special sound machine. The ritual, which was created to serve us, now becomes our master. If we miss a step, or if it doesn't feel the right way, we panic. We think, now I'll never get to sleep. We have become attached to the form of the practice rather than its spirit, which is simply to relax. The raft designed to carry us to the shore of peace has become a heavy burden we insist on carrying on our backs. Finally, and most profoundly, there is attavada upadana, the clinging to a doctrine of self. This is the deepest and most pervasive attachment of all. It is the grasping at the idea of a solid, separate, permanent me. It is the story we tell ourselves about who we are, lying in bed. This self is the tireless narrator of our anxieties. It is the voice that says, I am an anxious person. I have always been a poor sleeper. My life is uniquely difficult. We cling to these identities, these personal narratives, even though they cause us immense pain. We cling to them because they feel like who we are. To let go of the story of me, the insomniac feels threatening, as if we would dissolve into nothingness. And so, we hold on to the familiar identity of our suffering, because the thought of letting it go feels like a kind of death to the ego. This clinging to a fixed self is the central pillar that holds up the entire structure of our nightly torment. Consider the difference in a relationship. Love says, your happiness is my joy. Attachment says, your presence is my requirement for happiness. Love is happy for a partner who finds joy in a hobby or a friendship, even if it doesn't involve us. Attachment feels threatened, jealous, or abandoned. The sleepless nights spent worrying about a partner, replaying their words, fearing their departure, these are almost never the product of love. They are the product of upadana. They are born from the fear of losing something we believe we own, something we believe is essential for our own completeness. This grasping, this upadana, is the mechanism of the second arrow. It is the sticky, fearful quality of the mind that takes an ordinary pain and transforms it into a prolonged saga of suffering. But what powers this mechanism? What is the raw energy that fuels this constant need to cling? Behind the grasping fist of upadana is a deeper, more primal force. It is a fundamental thirst of the mind, a relentless craving that is never truly quenched. This is the river of tanha, And it is into these powerful currents that we must look next. We have seen that the second arrow of our own making is powered by upadana, the grasping fist of attachment. But we must ask, what is the energy that constantly commands this fist to clench? What is the force behind the clinging? Here we arrive at the very heart of the Buddha's diagnosis of our restlessness, the core of the second noble truth, the origin of all our suffering. He said, is a force called tanaha. The literal translation of this word from the Pali is thirst. And there is perhaps no more perfect metaphor for the unceasing, nagging, and painful drive that governs our unenlightened minds. It is this primal thirst, this deep craving, that is the true root of our sleepless nights. To understand tanha, imagine you are adrift on a life raft in the middle of a vast ocean. The sun is beating down, your throat is parched, and you are tormented by a desperate thirst. You are surrounded by water, an endless supply of it. In your delirium, you dip your hand into the ocean and bring the cool liquid to your lips. For a fleeting moment, there is relief. The coolness soothes your dry throat, but this relief is a devastating illusion. Within moments, the salt in the water begins to pull the very moisture from your cells, leaving you even more dehydrated, even more desperately thirsty than before. Driven mad by this intensified craving, you drink again, and then again, each drink promising a final relief, but delivering only a deeper agony. This is precisely the mechanism of tanha. It is the tragic cycle of seeking satisfaction from sources that, by their very nature, can only increase our thirst. The Buddha, with his characteristic clarity, described this thirst as having three distinct forms, three channels through which this river of craving flows. By learning to recognize them in ourselves, we can stop drinking the poison. The first and most obvious is kama tanha, the thirst for sensual pleasure. This is the craving for anything that delights our six senses: the sight of a beautiful face, the sound of a favorite song, the smell of fresh coffee, the taste of a sweet dessert, the feeling of a soft blanket, and even the stimulation of a pleasant thought. Our entire modern consumer culture is built on and fueled by kama tanha. It is the engine that drives us to scroll endlessly through our phones, hunting for the next interesting image or validating comment. It's the desire that makes us open the refrigerator when we aren't truly hungry, just searching for a pleasant taste to distract us. It is the relentless pursuit of comfort, entertainment, and stimulation. This thirst isn't just for things we might label as bad or unhealthy. We can crave good things too. We can crave the pleasant feeling of a successful workout, the ego gratification of praise, or even the blissful state of a deep meditation. The object doesn't matter as much as the nature of the thirst itself, the constant, restless seeking of the next pleasant experience to feed upon. The second form is deeper and more entwined with our identity. It is bhava tanha, the thirst for becoming or existence. This is the profound craving to be someone, to solidify our sense of self, to carve out a permanent and significant identity in the world. It is the voice that whispers, "When I get that promotion, then I will be a success. When I find the perfect partner, then I will be complete. If only I were thinner, or richer, or more admired, then I would finally be happy." This is the thirst that fuels our ambition, our comparison with others, and our gnawing sense of inadequacy. We are constantly trying to construct a stable, impressive me out of the shifting sands of life. We crave existence, but not just any existence, a better, more secure, more permanent, more validated existence than the one we have now. The third form may seem paradoxical, but it is one of the most powerful forces at play when we lie awake at night. It is vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-becoming or annihilation. This is the craving to get rid of something. It is the fierce aversion to unpleasant experiences. It is the desperate desire for a headache to stop, for an annoying person to leave, for a painful memory to disappear. It is the internal scream of, "I can't stand this." This thirst for annihilation is not a wish for peace. It is an act of war against reality. It is a violent pushing away of the present moment. Now, let us bring these three thirsts into the bedroom at midnight. As you lie there, unable to sleep, your mind becomes a perfect laboratory for observing tanha, the thirst for sensual pleasure. Kama tanha is there in your craving for the delicious feeling of drifting into unconsciousness, and your intense frustration when that pleasure is denied. The thirst for becoming, bhava tanha, is there in the thoughts that endlessly replay the day's events, trying to edit the script, to make you look better, smarter, or more justified. It's the mind planning tomorrow's battles, trying to construct a future self that will finally be secure and in control. But most of all, the sleepless mind is drowning in vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-becoming. You are consumed by the craving for your anxiety to cease. You are desperate for the mental chatter to be annihilated. "I just want these thoughts to stop," you plead. "I can't take another night of this." This intense resistance, this desperate thirst for your present reality to be obliterated, is the salt water you are drinking. This very struggle, this pushing against what is, floods your body with the stress hormones of fight or flight, cortisol and adrenaline. These are the very chemicals that make sleep impossible. In a cruel twist of irony, your desperate thirst for sleep becomes the very thing that guarantees your wakefulness. You are fighting your own mind, and in doing so, you are creating the very conditions of suffering you so desperately wish to escape. The defining tragedy of tanha is that it is, by its very nature, insatiable. No matter what we acquire, the satisfaction is fleeting. The new car becomes just the car. The thrill of the promotion fades into the stress of the new job. The delicious meal ends, and we are left wanting another. The fundamental premise of a mind run by tanha is, if I just get this one more thing, then I'll be satisfied. But it is a lie. The finish line is a mirage that moves every time we approach it. This is the exhausting, relentless cycle of seeking and never finding that the Buddha called samsara, the endless wheel of suffering. We are on a treadmill, running with all our might, convinced that peace is just one more step away, failing to realize that our very running is our restlessness. This raises a crucial question. If satisfying our cravings is like drinking salt water, if it only deepens our thirst and perpetuates our suffering, why do we continue to do it? Why does our mind, night after night, instinctively reach for the very poison that torments it? It is because we are operating under a profound misunderstanding. We fundamentally misperceive the nature of the things we crave and the world in which we live. We believe the salt water is fresh water. We mistake the fleeting, flickering, and insubstantial phenomena of our lives for things that are solid, lasting, and capable of giving us real happiness. To break free from the deadly cycle of thirst, we must see through this illusion. We must look directly at the unstable, ephemeral, and dreamlike nature of reality itself. This requires us to understand the first of the three universal characteristics of existence, the great truth of anicca, or impermanence. We have journeyed into the heart of our restlessness and found tanha, the insatiable thirst for things to be other than they are. We crave pleasure. We crave to be a better version of ourselves. And we crave for our pain to be annihilated. But this raises a profound question. Why do we continue to drink the salt water? Why does our mind instinctively believe that the next object, the next experience, or the next achievement will finally quench its thirst for good? The answer lies in a fundamental delusion, a veil of misperception through which we view the world. We are trying to build a permanent home on shifting sands. To find true rest, we must first understand the nature of the ground beneath our feet. This brings us to one of the most liberating and essential teachings of the Buddha, the truth of anicca, or impermanence. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." This fragment of Western wisdom is a perfect echo of the Buddha's deep insight. The universe, from the grandest galaxy down to the most fleeting thought, is not a collection of fixed objects, but a dynamic, ceaseless, and interconnected flow. Everything is in a state of constant flux. We try to grasp reality, but our hands close on empty air, because reality is not a thing to be held. It is a process to be witnessed. The greatest source of our tension, the very fuel for our anxieties, is our war against this fundamental truth. We suffer because we are constantly trying to cling to flowing water. Let's look at this truth not as an abstract philosophy, but as a living reality in our own experience. Look at the world around you. The seasons turn. Cities are built and rebuilt. Empires rise and fall. The relationships that define our lives evolve. They begin and end. They deepen, and sometimes they wither. The career you have today did not exist a century ago and may not exist a century from now. We seek stability and security in a world whose very essence is change. And this mismatch between our desire and reality is a constant source of underlying stress. Now bring your awareness closer to your own body. Your body is a magnificent teacher of anicca. It is never the same from one moment to the next. Billions of cells are dying and being reborn in this very instant. Your body is aging, a slow and steady process of transformation. It feels energetic one day and fatigued the next. It becomes ill, and then it recovers. We cling desperately to an image of a healthy, youthful, vigorous body, and we feel fear or despair when it inevitably changes, when it shows signs of wear, when it fails to meet our demands. When you lie awake at night, you might become intensely aware of a small ache or a strange sensation. Your mind, seeking permanence and control, can latch onto this sensation with fear, creating a whole story of impending illness. It forgets that this sensation, like everything else in the body, is just a temporary event, a cloud passing through the sky. Even closer than the body are our feelings and emotions. This is a river in constant, churning motion. No emotional state is permanent. Joy arises, beautiful and brilliant, and then it naturally subsides. Sadness comes, a heavy fog, and then it too eventually lifts. Anger flashes like lightning, and then it is gone. Peace settles like a gentle mist, and then it too is disturbed. But when we are in the grip of a powerful and painful emotion like anxiety, we lose all perspective. We believe it is a permanent fixture of who we are. We think, I am an anxious person, instead of, I am a person who is currently experiencing the temporary feeling of anxiety. We are so terrified of the feeling that we fight it. We resist it. We do everything in our power to push it away. This resistance is a refusal to accept its impermanent nature. By trying to dam the river of emotion, we create a flood of suffering that overwhelms us. And what of our thoughts? This is the most turbulent and fastest flowing river of all. A thought appears in your mind from nowhere. Did I lock the front door? What did she mean by that comment? I'm going to fail that presentation tomorrow. These thoughts are weightless, substanceless. Like bubbles rising to the surface of water, they appear, and if left alone, they pop and disappear. But what do? We reach out. We grab onto a single thought, and we treat it as if it were a granite boulder. We believe it. We identify with it. We build entire narratives, entire identities around these fleeting mental events. Lying in bed, the mind produces a worried thought, and we grab it, wrestle with it, and follow it down a rabbit hole of catastrophic fantasies. We are trying to solidify a cloud, trying to nail a shadow to the floor. It is an exhausting and utterly futile exercise. There is a timeless story of a powerful king who summoned his wisest advisors. He commissioned them to create a magic ring. I want a ring, he said, with an inscription that will make me humble and sober in my moments of greatest victory, and will give me hope and courage in my hours of darkest despair. The sages thought for a long time, and finally, they presented the king with a simple gold band. Etched upon it were 4 simple words: this too shall pass. The king wore the ring always. When he won a great battle and rode in a victory parade, he would feel his pride swell, and then he would glance at the ring, and his heart would be humbled. When his kingdom was ravaged by famine or threatened by invasion, he would fall into despair, and then he would look at the ring, and his spirit would find the courage to endure. This simple phrase is the most profound distillation of the wisdom of Anika. It applies to everything. The pleasure you feel now, this too shall pass. The unbearable pain you feel, this too shall pass. The triumph, the failure, the praise, the blame, the joy, the sorrow, and most relevant for us, in the quiet darkness of the bedroom, the frustrating, agitating, maddening state of being awake when all you want is to sleep, this too shall pass. It is not a permanent condition. It is not who you are. It is a temporary state, a visitor that will, in its own time, depart. To see impermanence is not to become a pessimist. It is to become a realist. And in that realism, there is profound peace. The struggle against the river, the desperate building of dams, the frantic attempt to stop the flow that is what is exhausting, that is the source of our suffering. To accept Anika is not to give up on life. It is to give up the unwinnable war against reality. It is to finally grant yourself permission to stop fighting, to let go, and to float. There is an unimaginable release of tension in this surrender. You can practice with this truth right now, simply by turning your attention to your breath. The breath is the perfect, living teacher of Anika. An in-breath begins. It swells. It reaches a peak, and then it dissolves. There is a pause, and then an out-breath begins. It flows. It empty, and it too disappears. It is a constant, gentle rhythm of arising and passing away, lying in bed. Instead of being caught in the chaotic storm of your thoughts, you can anchor your awareness in this simple, profound reality. Don't try to control the breath. Just feel it. Feel its transient, changing, fluid nature. Each breath is a reminder this is what reality is like. It flows. By aligning your mind with the breath, you align your mind with truth. And in that alignment, there is a deep and abiding calm. Our suffering, then, comes from trying to grasp this flowing water. We cling to pleasant, impermanent experience, desperately hoping they will last. But this is only half of the battle we wage against ourselves. We also develop a powerful, exhausting attachment to pushing away the unpleasant, impermanent experience. Our inner life is a two-front war, clinging to pleasure and averting pain. To fully understand our restlessness, we must now examine these two sides of the same counterfeit coin. We have stood on the banks of the river of reality and witnessed its fundamental nature, anicca, the law of constant, unrelenting change. Everything flows. Nothing is permanent. It is our failure to accept this truth that causes us so much pain. Faced with this ceaseless flow of experience, the untrained mind reacts in one of two predictable ways. When the river brings something pleasant to us, a delightful sensation, a happy memory, a moment of peace, the mind's immediate, instinctual reaction is to grasp. It reaches out, tries to hold on, and says, "More of this, please." This is the force of attraction, of greed, known in Pali as lobha. Conversely, when the river brings something unpleasant, a painful sensation, a difficult emotion, a worrisome thought, the mind recoils. It pushes away, resists, and tries to destroy the experience, saying, "Get this away from me." This is the force of aversion, of hatred, known as dosa, lobha and dosa, greed and aversion, attraction and repulsion. These are the two fundamental, automatic reactions that dictate the rhythm of our inner lives. They are the north and south poles of a restless mind, two opposite seeming forces that are, in fact, two sides of the same counterfeit coin. They are the engine of the second arrow, the twin puppeteers that keep us dancing on the strings of suffering. To understand them is to understand the mechanics of our own inner turmoil. Let's first look at lobha, the force of attraction. This is not just the gross greed for immense wealth or power. It is the subtle, moment-to-moment leaning in towards anything we find pleasant. It is the I want mind. It's the almost imperceptible urge for one more spoonful of a delicious dessert. Even when we are full, it's the magnetic pull to check our phone for a new notification, a small hit of validation or stimulation. It's the desire to prolong a pleasant conversation, to hold on to a compliment, to replay a happy memory over and over again. Lobha is the mind's ongoing project to maximize pleasure and to make it permanent. A project doomed to fail in a world of anicca. When you are trying to sleep, lobha manifests as an intense craving for the sensation of rest. You desire the feeling of your muscles relaxing, the comfort of your bed, the peace of a quiet mind. the delicious sensation of finally drifting off. You become greedy for sleep itself. You hunt for it. You stalk it. You try to pounce on it and force it to happen. But sleep is a state of surrender, not of conquest. The very act of grasping, of wanting, of chasing, is an act of tension and effort. It is the opposite of release. Your greed for the pleasure of sleep becomes the very barrier that keeps you from it. Now let us turn to its twin, dosa, the force of aversion. Like lobha, this is not just about extreme rage or hatred. It is the subtle, constant pushing away of anything we find unpleasant. It is the I don't want mind. It is the flicker of irritation at the sound of a mosquito in the dark. It is the frustration of being stuck in traffic when you are late. It is the harsh self-judgment that arises when you make a mistake. Dosa is the mind's ongoing project to eliminate all discomfort. A project just as futile as the quest to make pleasure permanent. In the quiet of the night, dosa often becomes the dominant force. We feel a profound aversion to the state of being awake. We hate it. We feel it as a personal failure, an enemy to be defeated. We feel aversion to the thoughts that race through our minds, treating them as intruders to be evicted. We feel aversion to the feeling of anxiety itself, that tight knot in our chest or stomach. We declare war on our own present moment experience. I hate feeling this way. We think, this anxiety has to stop. But this resistance, this pushing away, is an act of intense struggle. It floods our nervous system with stress hormones. It tightens our muscles. It turns our bed into a battlefield. And a battlefield is no place for rest. The energy of aversion is the energy of wakefulness, of vigilance, of war. It is crucial to see that lobha and dosa are not separate, but are locked in an intimate, self-perpetuating dance. They feed each other. The more you desperately cling to pleasure, the more you will suffer with anger and frustration when that pleasure inevitably fades. Or when pain arises instead, the more you hate and fear pain, the more desperately you will grasp at any fleeting pleasure as a form of escape or anesthetic. The mind becomes a pendulum, swinging wildly from the craving of I want this to the aversion of I hate this, never finding a moment of balance, never coming to rest in the center. There is a classic Buddhist story that perfectly illustrates this trap. A hunter devises a clever way to catch monkeys. He takes a hollowed-out coconut, drills a small hole in it, and places some sticky rice inside before securing the coconut to the ground. A monkey, wandering by, smells the delicious rice. Lobha, the desire for pleasure. Arisis, the monkey reaches its hand through the small hole and grabs a fistful of the sticky rice. But now, with its fist clenched, its hand is too large to withdraw from the hole. It pulls and tugs, but it is stuck. The monkey's pleasure-seeking has now led to a problem, and so, dosa arisis, the monkey becomes enraged. It screeches and thrashes, pulling with all its might against the trap. In its fury, it tries to beat the coconut with its other hand. But the hunter has spread tar on the coconut surface, and now its other hand is stuck fast. Panicked, it kicks at the trap with its feet, only to find them stuck as well. The monkey is now completely immobilized. It is a prisoner, but what is imprisoning it? Not the hunter's great strength. It is the monkey's own inability to do one simple thing to unclench its fist and let go of the rice. The moment it lets go of the object of its initial desire, its greed, It is free. We are that monkey. The sticky rice is any fleeting pleasure, any fixed idea, any state of being like the state of being, a sleep that we grasp at. Our suffering comes not from the trap itself, but from our own desperate clinging and our violent resistance. Our struggle only entangles us further. What, then, is the way out? The path to freedom is not to find a way to get the rice out, nor is it to destroy the coconut. The path to freedom is to simply let go of the rice. In Buddhist practice, this is the middle path. It is the cultivation of a mind that does not automatically grasp at pleasure or push away pain. It is the development of a balanced, spacious awareness that can simply observe the arising and passing of all experiences without being thrown off balance. As you lie in bed, you can practice this when you feel a strong desire for sleep, the pull of lobha. You can mentally note it with gentle curiosity. Wanting, greed is present. You see it. You acknowledge it. But you don't have to fuel it. When you feel a wave of frustration or hatred for your anxiety, the push of dosa, you can note that too. Aversion, resistance is present. You are not judging it or trying to get rid of it. You are simply naming what is true in that moment. This simple act of mindful observation creates a space. It unhooks you from the automatic reaction. You cease to be the struggling monkey and become the calm, compassionate witness watching the struggle. In that space of witnessing, the fist can begin to unclench. In that space, there is peace. This frantic dance of pulling and pushing, of lobha and dosa, is always performed in the service of one central character. There is an I who wants and an I who resists. There is a me at the center of this drama whose desires must be fulfilled and whose comfort must be protected at all costs. But who or what is this I? Is it as solid and real as it feels? To find a truly deep and unshakable peace, we must turn our gentle, investigative light onto the dancer itself. We must question the very existence of the one who clings. We have explored the push and pull of attraction and aversion, the forces of lobha and dosa that keep our minds in a state of constant, restless motion. But we must now ask a most fundamental question. Who is the one being pulled and pushed? Who is this central character at the heart of our inner drama? All our struggles seem to revolve around a single protagonist. I want to be happy. I hate feeling anxious. Why is this happening to me? This sense of I feels like the most obvious, solid, and continuous thing in our entire existence. It feels like the thinker of our thoughts, the feeler of our feelings, the CEO in the headquarters of our mind. And yet, the Buddha's most profound, most challenging, and ultimately most liberating teaching is aimed directly at this central character. This teaching is called anatta, or not self. It suggests that this solid, separate I we feel ourselves to be is, in fact, an illusion, a beautiful, complex, and convincing illusion, but an illusion nonetheless. This is perhaps the most difficult concept in all of Buddhist thought, and it is best illuminated by a famous encounter between the Buddhist sage Nagasena and the Greco-Bactrian king Milinda. The king, a sharp and logical thinker, approached Nagasena and asked his name. The monk replied that he was known as Nagasena, but he immediately clarified that Nagasena was merely a convenient designation, a name in common use, for there was no permanent, independent person to be found there. The king was astounded. "Venerable sir," he challenged, "if there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food, who lives the holy life?" Nagasena, calm and unperturbed, responded not with a statement, but with a question. "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here today? Did you come on foot or in a vehicle?" The king, proud of his royal stature, replied, "I came by chariot." "Excellent," said Nagasena. "Then please, Your Majesty, define for me what a chariot is. Is the pole the chariot?" "No, venerable sir," the king replied. "Is the axle the chariot?" "No. Are the wheels, the chariot, the frame, the ropes, the yoke, the reins?" To each question, the king had to answer, "No." Nagasena pressed on gently. "Then is this chariot something else? Something other than its parts?" Again, the king was forced to reply, "No." Nagasena then delivered his conclusion. "Your Majesty, it seems that when we search for this chariot, we cannot find it. Chariot is just a convenient name, a label we use when the pole, the axle, the wheels, the frame, and all the other parts are assembled together in a specific way. It exists as a concept, but there is no intrinsic separate chariot essence to be found. Having set the trap, Nagasena now sprung it. It is the same, Your Majesty. With Nagasena, it is a label for a temporary collection of constantly changing components. When we look for a solid, unchanging self that exists apart from these components, it can never be found. Just as Nagasena deconstructed the chariot, the Buddha deconstructed the self into 5 primary components, known as the 5 aggregates or pancakanda. These are the parts that, when assembled, we label as me. The first is form. This is our physical body, our bones, our skin, our breath. This body is in a state of constant flux. It is aging, breathing, degusting, changing with every moment. It is clearly impermanent. Is this decaying body the real, permanent you? The second is feeling. This is the raw data of our senses, categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A cool breeze is pleasant. A sharp noise is unpleasant. The feeling of the chair beneath you might be neutral. These feelings are utterly dependent on external contact and are as fleeting as the weather. Are these shifting feelings the real, permanent you? The third is perception. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes and labels. It sees a shape and color and says, "Blue car." It hears a tone and says, "Sad music." It registers a feeling and says, "Anxiety." Our perceptions are conditioned by our memory, or language, our culture, and our mood. They are not a clear window onto reality. Is this labeling process the real, permanent you? The fourth is mental formations. This is a vast and busy category that includes all our thoughts, intentions, opinions, beliefs, habits, desire, and aversions. All the activity of lobha and dosa resides here. It is the most chaotic and turbulent of all the aggregates. A storm of mental events arising and passing away. Are these volatile thoughts and habits the real, permanent you? The fifth is consciousness. This is the basic quality of knowing, or awareness itself. There is consciousness of seeing, consciousness of hearing, consciousness of thinking. But this consciousness is not a monolithic spotlight. It is a flickering flame that arises only in dependence on an object and a sense organ. I consciousness arises when an I and a form come together. It is not a continuous, independent entity. Is this flickering awareness the real, permanent you? When we look for the self, we find only these 5 changing processes. The I is not a thing, but an event. It is a verb, not a noun. It's like a whirlpool in a river. The whirlpool has a recognizable pattern and shape, but if you reach into it, you find nothing there but the ever-flowing water of the river itself. The self is a story, a narrative our mind weaves together from the threads of memory, feeling, and thought in a desperate attempt to create a sense of coherence, continuity, and control in a chaotic, flowing world. So what does this have to do with not being able to sleep? Everything. Who is it that lies in bed suffering? It is this fictional protagonist. This storybook I. It is this I that takes a critical comment from the day and feels personally wounded by it. It is this I that latches onto the feeling of anxiety and declares, I am an anxious person. It is this I that feels consumed by regret about its past and terror about its future. This self is the suffering hero of the entire drama playing out in your mind. It is the one who takes everything personally. Realizing this, even just intellectually at first, is the beginning of a profound liberation. If there is no solid, unchanging self, then you are not your thoughts. A worried thought can arise in the mind, but you don't have to claim it as my thought or believe it defines you as a worrier. You can see it as just what it is, an impersonal mental event, a cloud passing through the sky of awareness. If you are not your emotions, then a wave of sadness or fear can move through you without solidifying into a permanent identity. The emotion is real, but it is not you when there is no fixed target. The second arrows of judgment and fear have nowhere to land. An insult is just a sound wave that creates an unpleasant feeling and a perception of insult. It doesn't have to wound me. A failure is just an outcome, an event, not a permanent stain on the character of a solid self. This understanding brings an incredible lightness and freedom. We can start to hold our identity or life story and our problems with a gentler grip, with more humor and less tragic seriousness. But this illusory self is crafty. It desperately wants to continue believing in its own reality. And one of the primary ways it does this, one of the main strategies it uses to feel solid and important, is by building a fortress for itself, a fortress made of its own ideas, beliefs, and opinions. It clings to its views as evidence of its own existence. I think, therefore I am. More dangerously, I am right. Therefore I am. To continue loosening the grip of this fictional self, we must now investigate its tendency to find security in being right, and the great weight that comes with clinging to our own views. We have taken a courageous look at the very center of our perceived universe, the sense of I, and found that, like Nagasina's chariot, it is a construct. It's a temporary assembly of changing parts, a story we tell ourselves. But this illusory self is a master architect, and its favorite building material is the concrete of its own opinions. To feel real, to feel solid and important, the ego builds a fortress around itself, a fortress whose walls are made of its views, its beliefs, and its unshakable conviction of being right. This clinging to views, known in Pali as Dihtiyupadana, is one of the most stubborn and deeply rooted obstacles to peace. It is the heavy armor the ego wears, and it is a weight that makes true rest impossible. Most of our suffering in daily life does not arise from reality itself, but from the violent collision between reality and our mental blueprint of how reality should be. We each carry around a detailed, often unconscious, set of rules for the world. We have a firm opinion about how a good partner should behave, how our children should act, how our government should run, and how our career should progress. We have a fixed view on what is fair, what is just, and what is right. This blueprint becomes our personal dogma when the raw, unpredictable, and untamable flow of life inevitably deviates from our blueprint, when our partner forgets an anniversary, when our children are defiant. When a project fails, we don't just feel disappointment. We feel a sense of profound violation. We feel that reality itself has made a mistake. Our suffering is not in the event, but in the gap between the event and our cherished view. The perfect illustration of this human predicament is the timeless parable of the blind men and the elephant. A king in a distant land brought a magnificent elephant into his courtyard and summoned a group of men who had been blind from birth. He invited them to experience the elephant and describe its nature. The first man reached out and felt the elephant's thick, sturdy leg. "I see," he declared with confidence. "An elephant is like a great, living pillar." The second man happened to grasp the elephant's tail. "You are mistaken," he scoffed. "An elephant is slender and flexible, exactly like a rope." A third man touched the smooth, hard surface of a tusk. "You are both fools," he shouted. "An elephant is not like a pillar or a rope. It is hard, sharp, and smooth, like a spear." Another, who felt the large, flapping ear, insisted it was like a fan. The one who held the trunk was certain it was like a thick snake. Before long, the men were embroiled in a furious argument, each one absolutely convinced of their own direct experience, each one positive that the others were either lying or hopelessly stupid. They yelled, they accused, and they came close to blows, all while the magnificent, whole elephant stood there in silence. The king looked upon the scene not with anger, but with a deep and compassionate sadness. We are all these blind men. The elephant is the vast, complex, and mysterious nature of reality. Each of us, through the lottery of our birth, our upbringing, our culture, and our unique life experiences, gets to touch one small part of it, and we, in our ignorance, mistake our tiny, partial perspective for the entirety of the truth. Our political view, our religious belief, our philosophy of life, these are our leg, our tail, our tusk, the suffering, the conflict, the wars that plague humanity, and the inner wars that plague our own hearts, all arise from this same tragic dynamic, the absolute conviction in the absolute rightness of our own limited view. Bring this into your life. Think of a recent argument with a loved one. The pain you feel is likely not just from the disagreement itself, but from the feeling of being misunderstood, from the deep conviction that your view is the correct one, and that if only they could see it, the conflict would be resolved. Now, Think of how this plays out at night. The quiet bedroom becomes a courtroom, and your mind is the tireless prosecuting attorney. It endlessly replays the day's arguments. But this time, it polishes your speech. It crafts the perfect, unassailable rebuttal that you should have said. It puts the other person on the witness stand and cross-examines them until their flawed logic is exposed for all to see. You fall into a fever dream of righteous indignation, proving to an imaginary jury how deeply you were wronged, how correct you truly were. You may win this imaginary case, but you have paid an enormous price. You have sacrificed your peace on the altar of being right. The mental state of proving, defending, and attacking is a state of high alert. It is a state of combat. The body tenses. The heart rate increases. The mind is sharp and adversarial. This is the biological and psychological opposite of the state of surrender, softness, and release that is required for sleep. We are kept awake by the sheer weight of our own opinions. The antidote to this affliction is not to become a person with no values or to fall into a pit of cynical relativism. The antidote is to cultivate the profound wisdom of humility. It is the practice of holding our views lightly, of recognizing them for what they are: provisional, incomplete, and conditioned. It is the ability to add a mental footnote to all our strongest beliefs, based on my current, limited understanding. It is the courage to embrace the phrase, "I don't know." A mind that is certain it is right is a mind that is closed. It is brittle and defensive. An open mind, a mind willing to be wrong, is flexible, curious, and resilient. A closed mind is always on guard. An open mind can be at rest. You can engage in this practice right now. Bring to mind a person with whom you have a strong disagreement. For just a few moments, suspend your own arguments. Suspend your need to be right. And instead, try with genuine curiosity to imagine their world. What part of the elephant are they touching? What life experiences? What fears? What hopes might have led them to the view they hold so dearly? The purpose of this exercise is not to abandon your own values or to agree with them. The purpose is to soften the concrete of your own certainty. It is to see them not as a flawed argument to be defeated, but as another human being, another blind man, trying to make sense of the great elephant of existence. Just like you, this single act of intellectual empathy is a powerful solvent that can begin to dissolve the hard shell of the ego. We have now traveled deep into the territory of our own minds. We have seen that our suffering is not a random misfortune, but arises from specific causes: our thirst for things to be different, and our clinging to the impermanent phenomena of life, our feelings, our sense of self, and now, our very own views. We have thoroughly diagnosed the condition. The question that must now be answered is, what is the treatment? How do we work with these deep-seated habits in the heat of the moment? We need more than a philosophical understanding. We need a practical, real-time tool that can help us see the clinging, I see the aversion, and see the story of self as it happens, creating the space to choose a wiser, more peaceful response. This master skill, the cornerstone of the entire path of liberation, is the gentle, radical, and transformative practice of mindfulness. We have journeyed like skilled detectives into the intricate landscape of our own minds. We have identified the culprits that steal our peace, the relentless thirst of tanha, the grasping fist of upadana, and the grand illusion of a solid, separate self who suffers. We have seen how our minds cling to pleasure, push away pain, and build fortresses out of our own opinions. We have, in essence, completed the diagnosis. Now, we must shift from being detectives to being physicians. From diagnosis to treatment, we move from the what and the why of our suffering to the essential how of our liberation. To do this, we need a master tool. We need a light to carry in the dark. A tool that allows us to see all these processes unfolding in real time, not as a theory, but as a lived experience. This tool, the cornerstone of the path to peace and the foundation for a restful mind, is the gentle, powerful, and radically simple practice of mindfulness. The Pali word for mindfulness is sati, and its meaning is beautifully direct. It means to remember or to bear in mind. It is the practice of remembering to pay attention to what is happening right here, right now, without judgment. Before we explore how to practice it, it is vital to clear away some common misunderstandings. Mindfulness is not about stopping your thoughts. It is not about emptying your mind or achieving a state of blissful blankness. This is the most common and damaging misconception. Many people try to practice, find that their mind is still churning with thoughts, and conclude, "I'm bad at this. I can't do it." The goal of mindfulness is not to stop the river of thought, but to change your relationship to it, to learn to sit peacefully on the riverbank and watch it flow by, without having to jump in and be swept away by its currents. To understand the spirit of mindfulness, imagine that your fundamental awareness, your true nature, is like a vast and open sky. It is spacious, limitless, and inherently untroubled. Your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, and your physical sensations are like the clouds that drift through this sky. Some clouds are bright, white, and puffy. These are your happy thoughts and pleasant feelings. Some clouds are dark and heavy, rumbling with thunder and flashing with lightning. These are your moments of fear, anxiety, and anger. Some are just thin, grey, wispy clouds that are barely there at all. The untrained mind makes a critical error. It believes it is the clouds. When a dark storm cloud of anxiety rolls in, it says, "I am anxious." When a cloud of anger appears, it says, "I am angry." It identifies completely with the passing weather of the mind and gets tossed about by the wind and the rain. Mindfulness is the radical practice of remembering that you are not the clouds, you are the sky. It is the practice of resting in your own vast, open awareness and allowing the clouds, all of them, the beautiful and the terrifying, to simply pass through. No matter how violent the storm, the clouds can never stain, harm, or fundamentally change the nature of the sky. The sky remains ever present, spacious, and at peace. Mindfulness is learning to embody the sky, not the weather. So how do we do this? The practice is disarmingly simple. As you lie in bed, you can begin right now. First, you choose an anchor for your attention, something that is always happening in the present moment. The most reliable and intimate anchor is the physical sensation of your own breath. You don't need to control it or change it in any way. Simply bring your curiosity to it. Feel the subtle coolness of the air as it enters your nostrils. Feel the gentle rise of your abdomen on the in-breath, and its gentle fall on the out-breath. Just rest your attention there, as if it were a butterfly resting on a flower. Now, inevitably, your mind will wander. This is not a mistake. It is not a failure. It is simply what minds do. It will wander into a memory from the past, a plan for the future, a worry, a fantasy. The magical moment of the practice is the instant you realize your mind has wandered. That moment of realization, oh, I'm not with my breath anymore. I'm thinking about work. That very moment is a moment of mindfulness. You have woken up. The next step is the most important, and it must be steeped in kindness. Once you have noticed that the mind has wandered, you gently, without any scolding or frustration, guide your attention back to your anchor, the feeling of the breath. That is the entire practice. The mind wanders. You notice it has wandered, and you kindly bring it back, over and over again. Each time you do this, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are weakening the habit of being lost in thought and strengthening the habit of being present. You are learning to sit on the riverbank instead of being swept away. You can think of mindfulness as being a calm and dignified gatekeeper sitting at the entrance to your mind. The gatekeeper's job is not to fight off visitors. It is simply to know who is arriving. A visitor named Worry, about paying the bills, comes to the door. The mindful gatekeeper doesn't panic. It simply notes, "Ah, Worry has arrived. Un moment l'attire." A visitor named Happy Memory from vacation appears. The gatekeeper notes, "A pleasant memory is here." Then comes a visitor called Physical Ache in the shoulder. The gatekeeper notes, "An ache is present." The gatekeeper doesn't get into arguments with the visitors, doesn't invite them in for a long stay, and doesn't try to shove them away. By simply noting their arrival, clearly and calmly, the visitors lose much of their power. They are seen, acknowledged, and they tend to move on, instead of storming into the house and taking it over. This simple, powerful skill is what allows us to finally break the cycle of the second arrow. The first arrow strikes a pang of anxiety, a critical thought. The untrained mind instantly fires the second arrow. "I hate this feeling. It's going to ruin my night. I'm a failure for feeling this way." But the mindful mind has a different response. The first arrow strikes. Instead of reacting, it observes. It turns the light of awareness onto the direct experience. "Ah, this is anxiety. It feels like a tightness in my chest. It makes my heart beat faster." By staying with the raw, physical sensation of the first arrow with gentle curiosity, we create a space. We interrupt the knee-jerk, habitual reaction. The second arrow is never fired. The story of suffering is never written. We feel the clean pain of the first arrow, and we allow it to be what it is, an impersonal, impermanent cloud passing through the vast sky of our being. This space that mindfulness creates is not an empty void. It is a space of profound potential. It is a clearing in the dense forest of our habitual reactivity. And once we have created this clearing, once we have paused from our usual patterns of grasping and averting, we have a choice. What shall we plant in this newfound space? We can deliberately choose to cultivate states of heart and mind that are healing and wholesome. We can fill the quiet space of awareness with warmth. This leads us directly to our next practice, the beautiful and transformative cultivation of metta, or loving kindness. We have discovered through the practice of mindfulness that it is possible to create a space within our own minds, a quiet clearing in the dense and tangled forest of our habitual reactions. Mindfulness is the act of clearing this space. But what shall we do with this newfound freedom? What shall we plant in this fertile ground? We have a choice. We can leave it empty, or we can deliberately cultivate states of mind that are healing, nourishing, and conducive to deep peace. This brings us to the practice of metta, a Pali word most often translated as loving kindness. If mindfulness is the clear-seeing eye of wisdom, metta is the warm, beating heart of compassion, and it is the direct and powerful antidote to the force of dosa, or aversion, which is the tight, cold, and fearful state of mind that so often keeps us awake at night. Metta is not the sentimental, conditional, or romantic love that we so often see in movies. It is not a love that says, "I will love you if you meet my needs." It is a far more radical and unconditional state of being. It is a steady, benevolent, and sincere wish for the well-being of all living creatures, including ourselves. It is a quiet, unwavering goodwill that we offer freely, without expecting anything in return. Think of it not as a passionate fire, but as the gentle, consistent warmth of the sun, which shines on all without discrimination. The practice of cultivating metta is not about forcing a feeling. It is about gently repeating and inclining the mind toward intentions of goodwill. And in doing so, we begin to soften the hard, protective shell around our own heart. There is no more powerful story to illustrate the force of metta than that of the Buddha and the raging elephant. Nalagiri, the Buddha's cousin, Devadatta, consumed by jealousy, contrived a plan to assassinate him. He arranged for the royal elephant, Nalagiri, a creature known for its ferocious temper, to be intoxicated with alcohol and then unleashed upon the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. As the enraged elephant charged, the street descended into chaos. People screamed and fled for their lives. The Buddha's loyal attendant, Ananda, in a brave but futile gesture, ran to stand in front of the Buddha to shield him with his own body. The elephant was a terrifying, unstoppable force of pure dosa, of raw, murderous aggression. But the Buddha remained perfectly calm. He did not run. He did not fight back. He asked Ananda to step aside, and he stood his ground, looking at the charging beast with perfect stillness. Then, he did something extraordinary. He began to radiate a powerful, invisible wave of pure metta. He flooded the space between himself and the elephant with unconditional, fearless, loving kindness. As the elephant entered this field of benevolent energy, a miracle occurred. The great beast, the incarnation of rage, began to slow its charge. Its furious trumpeting ceased. The madness in its eyes softened into confusion, and then into tranquility. It came to a halt before the Buddha, lowered its massive head, and knelt before him, completely tamed. This story is a profound teaching. It shows that the ultimate antidote to hatred, fear, and aggression is not more aggression. It is the unwavering power of a kind and open heart. The same force that can pacify a raging elephant can also pacify the raging, anxious thoughts in our own minds. When we are attacked by our own inner critic, our instinct is to fight back, creating more conflict. Metta offers another way to meet the aggression, with a radical gentleness that disarms it at its source. The practice of metta meditation is a systematic training of the heart. You can do it right now. As you lie in bed, the structure is a gradual expansion of goodwill, starting with the most difficult person for many of us to love ourselves. The first step is to offer loving kindness to yourself. You cannot pour from an empty vessel, and any kindness you offer to others will feel hollow if you cannot first offer it to the one who is always with you. So, find a comfortable position. You might bring to mind an image of yourself, perhaps as a young, innocent child. Then, silently and gently in your mind, repeat a few phrases, feeling the intention behind them. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe," "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I live with ease." Repeat them slowly, like a gentle inner mantra. It may feel awkward, mechanical, or even untrue at first. Your inner critic might object. That is perfectly normal. Don't try to force a feeling. Simply rest in the gentle repetition of the benevolent wish. The intention is the seed. The second step is to bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you feel easy and uncomplicated love and gratitude. It could be a mentor, a family member, or even a beloved pet. Hold their image in your heart and offer them the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Notice how the heart naturally warms and softens when offering this sincere wish. The third step is to bring to mind a neutral person. This might be a cashier you see at the store, a person you pass on your daily commute, someone you neither like nor dislike. You hold their image in your mind and, just as before, you offer them the same wishes for their well-being. This step is important because it begins to stretch the muscle of the heart, teaching it to offer goodwill beyond its immediate, personal circle. It helps to break down the artificial barriers between us and them. The fourth step is the most challenging and the most transformative. You bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict, someone who has hurt you, or someone you simply find irritating. This is not about condoning their harmful behavior or forcing yourself to feel a sense of affection. It is about a radical act of self-care. It is about recognizing that holding on to anger, hatred, and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only harms you. So, as an act of liberation for your own heart, you offer them the phrases. If it feels too difficult, you can modify it to the best of my ability. I wish you peace. Or may you be free from the suffering that causes you to act this way. You do this not for them, but for you to release the heavy burden of your own aversion. Finally, in the fifth step, you let the circle of loving kindness expand infinitely. You imagine it radiating out from your heart in all directions, front, back, left, right, up, and down. You extend it to all beings in your city, your country, on your continent, and across the entire world. You offer it to all creatures, great and small, seen and unseen. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. You rest in this boundless feeling of benevolent connection. This practice is a powerful medicine for the sleepless mind. The mind gripped by anxiety and self-criticism is a tight, cold, constricted mind. It is a mind at war with itself. The mind practicing metta is a soft, warm, a spacious, and gentle mind. It is a mind that is making peace with itself. When the voice of your inner critic starts shouting, "You're a failure for worrying about this," you can meet it with the whisper of metta, "May I be at ease." When you find yourself stewing in anger at someone, you can use the practice to release yourself from the torment of your own resentment. You are changing your inner climate from one of harsh, unforgiving judgment to one of gentle, compassionate acceptance. You are turning off the glaring spotlight of interrogation and lighting the soft, warm candle of goodwill. With mindfulness, we have learned to create a space of clear seeing. With metta, we have learned to fill that space with warmth and kindness. Armed with these two powerful tools, a clear mind and a kind heart, we are now fully equipped to turn towards the two great domains of our mental turmoil. The two territories where our restless minds love to wander and get lost the tangled thickets of the past, and the foggy, uncertain landscape of the future, with the light of mindfulness to see and the warmth of loving kindness to soften our hearts. We are now equipped to face the two great phantom realms where the restless mind loves to dwell the unchangeable past and the unknowable future. Our bodies lie here, now, in this bed, in this room, in this present moment, but our minds, so often, are time travelers. They are ghosts, endlessly shuttling between a museum of regrets and a theater of anxieties. This fundamental split between where our body is and where our mind is creates a deep and exhausting tension. It is the primary reason we feel so scattered and unable to settle, to find peace. We must learn to call the wandering mind home to the only moment that is ever real, the present. First, let us turn to the past. The mind's entanglement with the past most often takes the form of regret. We lie awake, and our mind becomes a cinema, replaying scenes from our life. We watch, again and again, the mistakes we've made, the opportunities we've missed, the unkind words we've said, the foolish actions we've taken. We are haunted by the ghosts of what should have been, or what if only had happened. Regret is a form of clinging, a desperate argument with history. But history is the one argument we can never win. The past is fixed. It is done. It is unchangeable. To rage against it, to endlessly wish it were different, is to pour all of our present moment energy into a black hole. We are suffering now, in the present, from events that are long since gone. There is a classic Zen story that brilliantly illustrates this burden. Two monks, one senior and wise named Tanzan, and one junior and pious named Aikido, were traveling together on foot. Their journey took them to a river that had been swollen by heavy rains, turning the path into a sea of mud. There at the riverbank, a beautiful young woman in a silken kimono stood hesitating, unable to cross without soiling her fine clothes. The monastic rules the monks followed were strict and forbade them from touching or even getting too close to a woman. The junior monk, Aikido, seeing the woman, primly averted his eyes and walked past her through the mud. The senior monk, Tanzan, however, did something else. Without a word, he walked up to the young woman, gracefully lifted her into his arms, carried her across the turbulent river, and gently set her down on the dry ground on the other side. He then bowed and continued his journey. The junior monk was scandalized. He was seething with silent judgment. For the rest of the day, for hours on end, he walked behind his master, his mind a storm of criticism. He broke the rules, he touched a woman. How could he do such a thing? What a terrible example. He replayed the scene in his mind 100 times, building his case, fueling his indignation. Finally, as they approached their lodging for the evening, Ekido could contain himself no longer. He burst out, "Tanzan, I have to ask you, we monks are supposed to keep our distance from women, especially young and lovely ones. It is dangerous for our vows. Why on earth did you carry that woman across the river?" Tanzan looked at his junior companion with a gentle, surprised expression. "Oh, the girl," he said. "I left her back there by the river hours ago. Tell me, are you still carrying her?" This story poses a question to each of us as we lie in bed tonight. What are you still carrying? What argument from this morning? What mistake from last week? What deep wound from 20 years ago? Are you still dragging into your bed with you like Tanzan? We can learn to engage with the moment, do what needs to be done, and then let it go completely. Or, like Aikido, we can allow the ghosts of the past to weigh us down, poisoning our present peace long after the event itself is over. Now let us turn to the other phantom realm, the future. If our relationship with the past is defined by regret, our relationship with the future is defined by anxiety. Anxiety is the act of clinging to a specific, desired outcome in a future that is, by its very nature, uncertain and beyond our control. We lie in bed, and our mind becomes a strategic planning committee, trying to account for every possible contingency. It rehearses conversations that haven't happened yet. It plays out worst-case scenarios, trying to find solutions to problems that do not exist. What if the presentation goes badly? What if I get sick? What if they don't like me? This endless what-if game is the mind's attempt to build a fortress of certainty in the shifting fog of the future. It is a futile attempt to tame the unknown. This constant state of planning and preparation keeps our nervous system on high alert, in a state of readiness for a threat that is purely imaginary. We cannot rest because our mind is on guard duty, protecting us from a future that has not arrived. So how do we call the time-traveling mind home? We use the gentle tools we have been cultivating. The practice is one of noting and returning. As you are resting, you will inevitably notice that your mind has been hijacked, that you are lost in a movie of the past or the future. The moment you notice this, you have already stepped out of the trance. Then, instead of scolding yourself, you can make a soft, gentle mental note. If you find yourself lost in a memory, you can simply label it remembering, or thinking about the past. If you find yourself caught in a web of future plans or worries, you can gently note planning or worrying. This act of labeling is not an intellectual analysis. It is a simple, mindful recognition. It frames the thought as what it is, an impersonal, mental event, not a binding reality. It pulls you from being the actor in the drama to being the audience member watching it. And after you have made your gentle note, you kindly guide your attention back to the present moment. You guide it back to your anchor, the physical sensation of your breath rising and falling, the feeling of the blanket on your skin, the distant hum of the refrigerator. You bring the mind home to its body, to the here and now, the only place where life is actually lived. Sometimes, the past is particularly sticky. Regret can have deep hooks, especially when it is tangled with shame. In these cases, we may need to bring in the warmth of metta in the form of self-forgiveness. This is not about condoning a harmful action or pretending a mistake didn't happen. It is a compassionate recognition of our shared human fallibility. It is an act of letting go of the heavy burden of self-recrimination. You can place a hand over your heart and offer a sincere wish to your past self, with the understanding I had then. I did what I did. I cannot change the past. I release myself from this burden now. I allow myself the grace of peace. This is a profound act of letting go. In this way, using mindfulness to see and loving kindness to soften, we can learn to release the heavy ghosts of yesterday and to stop wrestling with the phantoms of tomorrow. This act of letting go, however, is not a passive surrender. It is a skillful art. It requires not just the right tools, but the wisdom to use them properly. This raises an important question. What is the wisest way to relate to these very teachings and practices? Is it possible to become attached even to the tools of liberation? This leads us to a famous parable that teaches us how to hold our practices with wisdom. The parable of the raft. We have been diligently assembling a toolkit for the mind. We have the clear light of mindfulness, the warmth of loving kindness, and the wisdom to release the ghosts of the past and future. With these powerful practices, it's easy to feel a sense of spiritual accomplishment, a feeling that we are finally getting somewhere. We have found our tools for liberation. And right here, at this moment of seeming progress, a new and exquisitely subtle danger emerges, the danger of becoming attached to the tools themselves. The path to freedom can, for the unwary, become another beautiful cage. To protect us from this, the Buddha offered one of his most essential and pragmatic teachings, the parable of the raft. He asks us to imagine a person on a perilous journey who arrives at the shore of a vast and treacherous expanse of water. The shore they are on is filled with dangers, with fear, with all the suffering we have been exploring. The far shore, in the distance, represents safety, security, and peace, the end of suffering. There is no bridge to cross this water, and no ferry to carry them. The person is resourceful. They think to themselves, the near shore is perilous, the far shore is safe. Let me gather together grass, twigs, branches, and vines, and build myself a raft so I can paddle safely to the other side. And so they do. They work diligently, skillfully binding the materials together until they have constructed a sturdy, reliable raft. Then, relying on the raft and paddling with their hands and feet, they make the difficult journey across the great water and arrive, at last, on the safe and peaceful shore. Standing there, relieved and grateful, they look back at the raft that served them so well. A thought arises. This raft has been of such immense help to me. I gathered it with great effort, and it brought me to safety. It would be a shame to simply abandon it here. The best thing to do would be to hoist it onto my head and shoulders and carry it with me as I continue my journey on land. The Buddha then turns to his monks and asks, "What do you think by carrying the raft on his head? Would that man be doing what is appropriate for the raft?" "No, Lord," the monks reply. The Buddha explains that a wise person, having arrived safely on the far shore, would think differently. They would think, "This raft was truly helpful, but its purpose has been fulfilled. It brought me across the water, And now I continue my journey on land. And with that understanding, they would either beach the raft on the shore or set it adrift in the water, and then continue their journey unburdened, light, and free. This simple story is a profound teaching about the very nature of spiritual practice. The near shore is our ordinary life, filled with the anxiety and restlessness of samsara. The great water is the flood of our mental afflictions, our greed, or aversion, our delusion. The far shore is nibbana, liberation, the unshakable peace of a mind that is free. And the raft is the Dharma itself. It is every teaching and every practice we have explored, the Four Noble Truths, the path of mindfulness, the cultivation of loving kindness, the wisdom of letting go. These are not sacred objects to be worshipped. They are pragmatic tools with a specific function to get us from the shore of suffering to the shore of peace. The question for us, as modern practitioners, is this: in what ways are we hoisting the raft onto our heads and carrying it as a burden? We do it. First, when we turn our practice into a rigid identity, the ego, having been shown the foolishness of its usual attachments to wealth, status, or reputation, simply latches onto a new, more refined identity. I am a meditator. I am a Buddhist. We start to measure our progress, comparing our practice to that of others. How long did you sit for today? What jhanic state have you reached? The practice, meant to dissolve the ego, becomes the ego's new favorite costume. This is clinging to the raft. We also do it when we become obsessed with technique, turning the teachings into a new form of dogma. We worry. Am I doing my mindfulness practice correctly? Am I following the instructions for metta perfectly? The instructions, which are meant to be a liberating guide, become a source of anxiety and self-doubt. We focus on the exact form of the raft, polishing its wood and tightening its vines, forgetting that its only true value is its ability to float. We turn the path into a performance, and we become our own harshest judge. This is clinging to the raft. We do it when we fall into the trap of spiritual materialism, using meditation as a tool to hunt for pleasant experiences. We become greedy for blissful states, profound insights, or feelings of peace. We chase after these states just as we once chased after worldly pleasures. The raft is not meant to be a luxury cruise ship. It is a functional vessel. To use it to seek pleasure is to miss its point entirely. It is a tool for liberation from thirst, not a new way to quench it. This is also clinging to the raft. The wise relationship with our practice is one of skillful, pragmatic use. We use the raft of mindfulness to cross the turbulent waters of a difficult emotion. Once we are on the other side, once our minds have settled, we don't need to keep obsessively analyzing the practice. We simply rest in the peace it has brought us. We use the raft of loving kindness to navigate a conflict with another person. Once our heart has softened, we can let go of the formal practice and simply interact from that place of warmth. The teachings are like a finger pointing to the moon. They are invaluable, but if we become obsessed with the finger, we will never see the moon. This does not mean we should be lazy or abandon the practices prematurely. The man in the parable had to diligently build his raft and then paddle with great effort to cross the river. We too must apply ourselves with sincerity and diligence. But the goal is to become such a skillful swimmer that we no longer need to desperately cling to the raft for our very survival. The goal is a mind so balanced, so resilient, that it can navigate the waters of life with an inherent grace and freedom. Ultimately, the most profound form of letting go is to let go of the one who is practicing. The final release is not an achievement of the ego. It is not the moment when I have finally perfected the art of letting go. It is the moment when the I who has been doing all the striving, all the practicing, and all the letting go is seen for the illusion that it is, and simply dissolves back into the effortless flow of reality. True peace is not something you acquire. It is what is revealed when the acquirer is no longer there. This wise, skillful, and sensitive way of relating to the path is not a cold, intellectual calculation. It is an art that is infused with the intelligence of the heart. To know when to put forth effort and when to release, when to hold on and when to let go, requires a deep sensitivity to the present moment. And while we have cultivated metta, the wish for all beings to be happy, there is another essential quality of the heart we must develop to deal with the undeniable reality of pain. This is karuna, or compassion, the trembling of the heart in the face of suffering, and the sincere wish for that suffering to be relieved. To truly travel wisely, our raft must be guided not only by goodwill, but by a profound and active compassion for ourselves and for all who struggle. Having learned to use our practices wisely, understanding them as a raft across the great water, we can now turn our attention to deepening the qualities of the heart. We have planted the seeds of metta, the gentle wish for all beings to be happy. But what happens when we encounter suffering? What is the heart's response? Not just to the potential for joy, but to the raw, undeniable reality of pain. This is where we must cultivate another of the four sublime states of mind, the quality of karuna, or compassion. If metta is like wishing for the sun to shine on everyone, karuna is the heart's trembling response when it sees someone shivering in a cold rain. It is the active, tender wish for suffering to be healed. It is the brave willingness to move towards pain, rather than away from it, with an intention to soothe and to free. There is no story that captures the transformative power of compassion more beautifully or poignantly than that of Kisa Gotami. She was a young woman living a life of perfect happiness. After a difficult past, she had found a loving husband and had given birth to a beautiful baby boy, the absolute center of her world. One day, however, tragedy struck. Her son fell suddenly ill, and within hours, he died in her arms. Kisa Gotami was shattered, but her mind, unable to accept this devastating truth, broke, clinging to the tiny, lifeless body. She went from house to house in her village, desperately begging for medicine that could revive her son. The villagers looked upon her with a mixture of pity and fear. Some mocked her, others turned her away. All believed she had gone mad. Finally, a wise man, seeing her inconsolable grief, directed her to the one person he thought might be able to help. "Go to the Buddha," he said. "He is the great physician." Kisa Gotami ran to the grove where the Buddha was teaching, laid the body of her child at his feet, explained her story, and begged him for the miracle she so desperately craved. The Buddha looked at her not with dismissal, but with an ocean of compassion. He did not tell her the child was gone forever. He met her where she was. "There is only one way to make the medicine that can save your son," he said gently. "I need a special ingredient. You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed. But it must be taken from a house where no one, No parent, no child, no spouse, no servant has ever died. Filled with a surge of desperate hope, Kisagutami began her quest. She went to the first house. "I need a mustard seed for a medicine to save my son," she said. "Of course." The woman of the house replied, "Take what you need." As the woman went to fetch it, Kisagutami asked, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said sadly, "the living are few, but the dead are many. We lost our beloved father just last year." Kisagutami, her heart sinking, went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every family was happy to give her a mustard seed, but every family had been touched by death. One had lost a wife, another a child, another a cousin. As she walked from door to door, a profound transformation began to take place. The sharp, isolating, personal nature of her own grief began to soften. She realized that her pain was not a unique curse that had befallen only her. Loss was not her private tragedy. It was the universal, shared, and unavoidable condition of all human beings. Her heart, once closed tightly around her own singular pain, began to open. Her grief for her one son expanded into a vast, boundless compassion for all beings who must endure the pain of separation and loss. She returned to the Buddha, empty-handed, but with a heart full of wisdom. She understood. She was ready to let go of her child's body and to walk the path of understanding. The Buddha's great compassion was not in his ability to perform a magic trick. It was in his wisdom to guide Kisagutami to her own profound insight. This is the very essence of karuna. It is not about fixing another's pain. It is about creating the conditions for wisdom and healing to arise. And the first place we must apply this is with ourselves. When you are lying in bed, tormented by anxiety or sadness, your first instinct is aversion, or dosa. You hate the feeling. You want it to go away. You fight it. You resist it. You criticize yourself for it. Karuna invites a radically different approach. It asks you to turn towards your own pain with the same tenderness that a loving mother would show to her crying child. Imagine for a moment that your anxiety is not an enemy to be vanquished. Imagine it is a small, frightened child within you, trembling in the dark. What would happen if, instead of shouting at it to be quiet, you could metaphorically get down on its level, wrap a warm blanket around it, and whisper, "I see you. I know you're suffering. It's okay. I'm here with you. I won't abandon you." This is the practice of self-compassion. It is the act of holding your own pain in a larger container of warm, accepting awareness. It is not about wallowing in the feeling or letting it take over. It is the simple, powerful act of non-abandonment. This alone stops the second arrow of self-criticism in its tracks. You may still feel the pain of the first arrow, the raw sensation of anxiety, but you are no longer making it worse by attacking yourself for feeling it. When you learn to do this for yourself, your own heart becomes a bridge. Your own suffering, which once felt like a useless, isolating burden, is transformed into a source of wisdom and empathy. When you have truly sat with the fire of your own anxiety, you can genuinely understand what a friend means when they say they are having a panic attack. When you have met your own feelings of failure with kindness, you can look upon another's mistake with a compassionate eye, not a judgmental one. Your pain becomes the very thing that connects you to the rest of humanity. You realize, that the living are few, but the dead are many. That everyone, behind their own carefully constructed walls, is carrying their own sorrows. It's important to understand that this compassion is not the same as pity. Pity looks down from a position of imagined superiority. Compassion meets another at eye level. Recognizing a shared condition, I know this kind of suffering. You are not alone. It is also not a state of being emotionally overwhelmed. The feeling of burnout we sometimes call compassion fatigue is more accurately empathetic distress, where we simply get lost in another's pain. True karuna, balanced with wisdom, is the wish for suffering to cease. It is an empowering, resilient, and life-affirming state of mind. This brave and tender quality of the heart, this willingness to turn towards pain with an intention to heal, is what gives us the strength to face the most difficult truths of our existence. It prepares us to look at the great, unavoidable first arrows of life that we spend so much energy trying to ignore. By cultivating compassion, we develop the courage to mindfully and gently embrace the profound teachers that are sickness, old age, and death, not as enemies to be feared, but as essential reminders of the precious and fleeting nature of our lives. With the tender heart of compassion, we have learned to turn towards our own pain rather than away from it. This practice of karuna gives us the courage and the resilience to look directly at the truths of existence we might otherwise spend our entire lives trying to avoid. Our modern world is a culture of denial. We are obsessed with youth, addicted to the idea of perpetual health, and terrified of the subject of death. We build our lives like glittering palaces, filled with distractions and entertainments, all in an effort to keep the uncomfortable realities of the human condition outside the gates. But the fear of these realities, sickness, old age, and death doesn't vanish just because we ignore them. Instead, it becomes a low-frequency hum of anxiety that runs beneath the surface of our lives. A hum that often becomes deafening in the silence of the night. The Buddhist path suggests a radical alternative, that the only way to be free from the fear of these truths is to have the courage to gently, mindfully, and compassionately turn towards them. The story of the Buddha's own awakening begins with just such a courageous act of looking. He was born a prince, Siddhartha Gautama, into a world of unimaginable luxury. His father, the king, had been told by court seers that his son would grow up to be either a great monarch who would conquer the world, or a great spiritual teacher who would renounce it. Terrified of losing his heir, the king constructed a perfect, gilded cage for his son. The prince lived in magnificent palaces where he was surrounded by beauty, pleasure, and youth. All signs of human suffering were meticulously hidden from him. He had everything a person could possibly desire. And yet, a deep sense of unease, a feeling that something was profoundly missing, began to grow within him. Driven by this divine discontent, he persuaded his loyal charioteer, Chenna, to take him on excursions outside the palace walls, into the real world. On his first trip, he saw something he had never witnessed before. An old man, his back bent, his skin wrinkled, his body frail and trembling. The prince, shocked, asked Channa, "What is that? What is wrong with that man?" Channa had to explain the reality of old age, that it is the natural fate of all who live long enough. The prince was deeply shaken. On his second trip, he saw a person lying by the roadside, their body racked with a terrible disease. He learned from Channa about the reality of sickness, a danger to which no one, not even a prince, is immune. His distress grew. On his third excursion, he witnessed a sight that shattered his world completely. He saw a funeral procession, a group of people weeping as they carried a still, lifeless body. For the first time, Prince Siddhartha encountered the stark reality of death. He understood that everything he loved, his beautiful wife, his newborn son, his own life, would one day come to an end. All the pleasures of the palace suddenly seemed hollow, fleeting, and meaningless in the face of this great, unavoidable truth. But then, on a fourth trip, he saw something different. He saw a wandering holy man, an ascetic with a shaved head and a simple robe. This man had no possessions, yet his face was serene. His posture was calm, and he radiated a profound sense of peace. In that moment, the prince realized that while suffering might be inescapable, there could be a path through it. He saw that it was possible to find a peace that was not dependent on the fleeting pleasures of the world. This was the inspiration for his great renunciation. When he left the palace behind to seek an end to suffering for himself and all beings. We are all Prince Siddhartha, living in our self-made palaces of denial, using work, entertainment, and 1,000 distractions to avoid looking at the fundamental truths of our existence. Our sleepless nights are often the first cracks appearing in the palace walls. The Buddha's journey teaches us that the path to peace is not to reinforce the walls, but to follow the prince out of the gates. One of the most powerful practices for this is the direct contemplation of what are known as the 5 remembrances. This is not meant to be a morbid or depressing exercise. It is a dose of powerful medicine, a practice of radical honesty that can dissolve fear and reorient our entire lives toward what truly matters. As you lie in bed, you can gently bring these remembrances to mind, holding them not as a source of fear, but as a source of wisdom. The first is, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. Silently repeating this helps to release the frantic, exhausting attachment to youth. It softens the fear of wrinkles, gray hair, and a slowing body. It allows for a graceful acceptance of the natural flow of life. The second is, I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape having ill health. This loosens the tight grip of our demand for perfect, uninterrupted health. It prepares the mind to meet the inevitable experiences of sickness, whether minor or major, with less shock, resistance, and fear. The third is the most profound, I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. Our entire culture is a conspiracy to deny this truth. By gently and repeatedly familiarizing the mind with this certainty, its power to create terror begins to fade. It is a master teacher of priorities. When you are kept awake by a worry about a social embarrassment or a work project, you can bring this remembrance to mind. In the face of my own inevitable death, how much does this really matter? It can shrink a mountain of anxiety into a molehill. The fourth remembrance is, all that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. This addresses our deep fear of loss. Contemplating this does not diminish our love, it deepens it. It infuses our relationships with a sense of preciousness. Knowing that our time with our loved ones is not infinite, encourages us to be more present, more kind, and more appreciative of them right now, rather than taking them for granted. Finally, the fifth remembrance shifts our focus from what we cannot control to what we can. My actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. This is the teaching on karma. We cannot control aging, sickness, or death, but we have agency over our own intentions and choices. This remembrance empowers us. It tells us that what truly matters is not how long we live, but how we live. The quality of our heart and our actions is our only real legacy. By contemplating these truths, not with fear, but with the calm, compassionate awareness we have been cultivating, we begin to live differently. The awareness of death is not a morbid obsession. It is the secret to a vibrant and meaningful life. It encourages us to forgive petty grievances, to let go of old resentments, and to speak the words of love that we so often leave unsaid. It awakens us to the profound beauty of the ordinary present moment, the simple feeling of this breath, the warmth of these blankets, the precious, simple gift of being alive right now. When we have the courage to embrace the whole of life, the light and the dark, the joy and the sorrow, something remarkable happens. Our capacity for joy does not shrink, it expands. By making our peace with the reality of loss, we become more able to celebrate happiness without the desperate need to cling to it. By understanding the nature of suffering, we can more genuinely and purely rejoice when we see happiness arise in the world. This leads us to the cultivation of the next of the sublime states, the beautiful and selfless quality of mudita, or sympathetic joy. Having had the courage to look directly at the great, unavoidable sufferings of life, sickness, old age, and death, we might assume that the path forward is one of grim sobriety. But the wisdom of the Buddha points in the opposite direction. A true understanding of life's fragility and sorrow does not lead to despair. Instead, it cracks the heart open to a deeper appreciation for joy, beauty, and good fortune wherever they may be found. This leads us to the third of the four sublime states, the practice of mudita. While metta is the wish for happiness and karuna is the response to pain, mudita is the heart's response to joy. It is the practice of sympathetic or appreciative joy, the ability to genuinely rejoice in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. In a world often driven by comparison and competition, mudita is a truly radical act, and it is a powerful medicine for the anxious, insecure mind. One of the most potent poisons that keeps us awake at night is the venom of comparison and envy. We lie in the dark, scrolling through the curated highlight reels of other people's lives on social media. We see their perfect vacations, their successful careers, their happy relationships, their beautiful homes, and as we watch, we feel a familiar, sinking feeling in the pit of our stomach. It is the bitter taste of envy, the quiet voice that whispers, "Their gain is my loss. Their happiness highlights my own lack." We feel diminished by their success. This is a state of self-inflicted poverty, where we choose to feel impoverished by the abundance of others. We are subscribing to the false and painful belief that happiness is a limited resource, a zero-sum game where one person's victory must be another's defeat. Mudita offers a revolutionary alternative. It invites us to see that happiness is not a finite commodity to be hoarded. It is a boundless resource. Like light, when you use your candle to light another's, your own flame is not diminished. In fact, the only result is that there is more light in the room. Sympathetic joy is the practice of learning to delight in the fact that other candles are being lit. It is the genuine celebration of another's happiness, free from the ego's insecure need to compare or compete. Imagine two merchants who sell fruit from adjacent stalls in a bustling market. The first merchant is a man ruled by envy. Every time he sees a customer choose to buy from his rival's stall, his heart constricts. He feels a pang of bitterness and resentment. He sees the world as a battle, and his rival's success feels like a personal defeat. His happiness for the entire day is contingent on being more successful than his neighbor. His world is small, stressful, and filled with a constant sense of scarcity. The second merchant practices mudita. When he sees a crowd of happy customers at his rival's stall, his heart feels light. He thinks to himself, "Wonderful, the market is thriving today. People are here. They are enjoying the fresh fruit, and the atmosphere is vibrant. A prosperous market is good for everyone." He is able to share in the general happiness. His rival's success does not threaten him. It is simply another manifestation of joy in the world, a joy he can appreciate and feel glad for. The world of the first merchant is impoverished, containing only one possible source of happiness, his own profit. The world of the second merchant is infinitely rich, because the happiness of his rival, the happiness of the customers, and the vibrancy of the market all become sources of his own joy. This is the promise of mudita, to radically expand our access to happiness. When we are trapped in the prison of the ego, the only happiness available to us is my happiness, my success, my pleasure. This is a very small and precarious well to draw from. But when we cultivate mudita, the entire world's joy becomes available to us. The laughter of children in a park, the success of a colleague on a difficult project, the beautiful reunion of a family at an airport, the victory of an athlete we admire, all of these become reasons for our own heart to feel glad. We are no longer limited to our own small story. So how do we practice this like metta? We can train the heart in stages. The easiest place to begin is with someone whose good fortune already brings you genuine joy. Bring to mind a dear friend who has recently had a wonderful experience. Perhaps they fell in love, got a job they dreamed of, or recovered from an illness. Hold their image in your mind. Picture their happy face. Feel their excitement. Then, offer them the phrases of mudita. "My friend, I am so happy for you. I rejoice in your good fortune. May your happiness and success continue. May your joy grow." Allow yourself to bask in the shared delight, to feel their happiness as your own. Once you are comfortable with this, you can begin to expand the practice. As you go about your day, look for opportunities to practice a kind of secret mudita. When you see a couple holding hands and laughing, silently wish them, "May your joy continue." When you read a story about someone's incredible achievement or act of kindness, allow your heart to feel a sense of appreciation and gladness. You are training yourself to notice and celebrate the good in the world, rather than just focusing on the threats and the problems. The most advanced and most healing part of the practice is to try to find a flicker of mudita for someone you envy or see as a rival. This is very difficult, and it must be approached with great gentleness. It is not about pretending you don't feel envy. You begin by acknowledging the envy. There is that tight, bitter feeling. Then you can try to shift your perspective. Even slightly, can you acknowledge the hard work they put in? Can you appreciate the skill they possess? Can you recognize that their success does not actually take anything away from you? You might try a simple phrase like, "Your happiness is not my sorrow. I wish you well." This practice is a powerful antidote to the poison of jealousy. It frees you from the exhausting and painful job of policing the success of others. We can also offer mudita to ourselves. So often, when we accomplish something, our inner critic immediately dismisses it or moves the goalposts, saying that wasn't good enough, or now you have to do the next thing. Mudita for ourselves is the practice of pausing to genuinely appreciate our own efforts and successes. No matter how small, it is feeling a clean, simple joy for our own good qualities and our own good fortune, without it becoming ego-driven pride. The joy of mudita is a truly free and unattached joy. You are not clinging to the other person's success or needing it for yourself. You are simply appreciating it as a beautiful event in the universe. This selfless quality purifies the heart and fills the mind with a light, buoyant energy. It is the direct opposite of the heavy, contracted energy of envy. It is a state of abundance, not scarcity. We have now explored the heart's response to the wish for happiness in metta, the response to pain in karuna, and the response to joy in mudita. We have cultivated a heart that is warm, that is tender, and that is celebratory. What happens when these three powerful qualities become mature and balanced? What is the state of mind that can hold the deepest sorrow of Kisa Gotami and the greatest joy of a celebrating friend with the same unshakable peace? This leads us to the fourth and culminating sublime state, the profound and steady quality of upekkha, or equanimity. It is the balanced, spacious, and imperturbable heart that is the foundation of true and lasting freedom. We have walked the garden of the heart, planting the seeds of loving kindness for all beings, tending to the soil of compassion in the face of pain, and learning to celebrate the blossoming of joy in others. Metta is the sun's warmth that wishes for all flowers to grow. Karuna is the gentle hand that pulls the weeds of suffering. Mudita is the heart that delights in the vibrant colors of every other flower in the garden. But what is the garden itself? What is the vast, stable, and patient ground that allows the sun, the rain, and all the flowers to coexist in harmony? This brings us to the fourth and culminating sublime state, the crowning jewel of the four Brahma Viharas. This is the profound quality of upekkha, or equanimity. It is the state of a balanced, spacious, and unshakable heart, and it is the very foundation of deep and lasting peace. It is essential to understand from the outset what equanimity is not. Hearing the word, we might imagine a state of cold indifference, of stoic apathy, of emotionless detachment. This could not be further from the truth. Upekkha is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of an immense and unwavering spaciousness that can hold all feelings. It is born not of carelessness, but of the deepest care and the most profound wisdom. It is the calm, steady heart of a loving parent who can watch their child learn to walk, allowing them to stumble and fall without rushing in to interfere at every moment, knowing that the stumbles are a necessary part of growth. It is a love so vast and wise that it can bear to watch the whole drama of life, the joy and the sorrow, the success and the failure without being thrown off its center. Imagine a great, ancient mountain. It has stood for millions of years. Fierce winds howl against its slopes, carrying the chill of blame, criticism, and loss. The mountain does not resist, nor does it tremble. It simply allows the wind to blow. Gentle, fragrant breezes also come, carrying the warmth of praise, pleasure, and gain. The mountain does not get carried away by them or try to cling to them. It simply allows them to pass. Storms rage. Rain lashes down. The sun beats upon its granite face. The mountain remains. Its stability comes not from being dead or unfeeling, but from being so deeply rooted, so vast and solid, that the ever-changing weather of the world cannot disturb its fundamental composure. A mind cultivated in upekkha is like this mountain. The ordinary, untrained mind is more like a weather vane, spinning wildly with every shift in the wind. These are what the Buddha called the 8 worldly winds, the paired conditions that keep us in a constant state of agitation. They are pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. Our entire unexamined life is a desperate attempt to secure the first of each pair and to avoid the second. We are elated when we experience gain and devastated when we experience loss. We swell with pride when we receive praise, and we shrink in shame when we are faced with blame. Our inner peace is completely dependent on external conditions, on the fickle winds of fortune and the ever-changing opinions of others. Equanimity is the liberation from this dependency. It is the deep, cellular understanding that all these conditions are, by their nature, impermanent, like the wind. They come and they go. A mind with equanimity can experience pleasure without desperately clinging to it. It can experience pain without violently resisting it. It can accept praise with humility and receive blame without collapsing. Because its sense of worth is no longer outsourced to the world, it finds its stability within. Upekkha is also what brings the other 3 sublime states into perfect balance. It ensures that our metta, or loving kindness, does not become selfish attachment or crippling grief when the object of our love experiences pain. We can love more purely and freely. It protects our karuna, our compassion, from becoming overwhelming. It provides the vast, steady container that can hold the suffering of the world without being drowned by it. It is the steady hand of the cosmic surgeon. It ensures our mudita, our sympathetic joy, doesn't curdle into excitement or a subtle form of craving. We can celebrate freely, without agitation. Equanimity is the spacious sky in which the sun of metta, the rain of karuna, and the beautiful weather of mudita can all have their place in a balanced ecosystem of the heart. This state of profound balance is the ultimate foundation for a peaceful night's sleep. A restless mind is a mind without equanimity. As you lie in bed, you are being buffeted by the 8 worldly winds in their memory and fantasy forms. You are tormented by the memory of yesterday's blame, or anxiously planning for tomorrow's potential gain. You are agitated by the pain of your wakefulness and desperately grasping for the pleasure of sleep. The battle is constant, but a mind resting in equanimity can simply be with what is. It notes. There is the wind of anxiety blowing. There is a memory of praise. there is a feeling of physical discomfort. It acknowledges them all, like the great mountain acknowledges the weather. Without being identified with them and without being knocked over, there is no longer an inner war, because there is no longer a need for conditions to be other than what they are in this moment. This is the deepest rest. Equanimity is considered the most advanced of the heart practices, and it is said to be the natural fruit that grows from a mature practice of mindfulness, metta, karuna, and a deep insight into impermanence. As we see again and again that all things arise and pass away, we naturally stop clinging and resisting. However, we can also actively cultivate it. We can bring to mind different people in our lives, those we love, those we dislike, and those we are neutral towards, and reflect. You are the owner of your own actions, the heir to your own karma. Your happiness and suffering arise from your own causes and conditions. I will care for you and help you, but I cannot control your path. I wish you peace on your journey. This reflection fosters a sense of profound respect and releases us from the exhausting and arrogant burden of trying to be the controller of the universe. We have now explored the great philosophical pillars of this path and the four sublime qualities of a liberated heart. We have built the conceptual and emotional foundation. Our raft is constructed. We understand its purpose and the shore towards which we are heading. Now, we must turn our attention to the most practical and immediate of concerns. How do we apply all of this wisdom as a direct, physical, step-by-step ritual for the body and mind, in the very moments we lay our head on the pillow and seek the release of sleep? We will now move from the why to the tangible how, beginning with the grounding and deeply relaxing practice of the body scan. We have now laid the profound groundwork of understanding and cultivating the heart. We have seen how our minds create suffering and how the great qualities of mindfulness, loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity can lead us toward freedom. Now, we bring this entire symphony of wisdom into the most practical and intimate arena, our own body. Lying in our own bed, at the threshold of sleep, we will now embark on a specific, guided practice, a bedtime ritual of letting go known as the body scan. The primary intention here is not to force yourself to relax. This is not another task to succeed or fail at. The intention is simply to pay attention, to bring a gentle, kind, and curious awareness to the physical landscape of your body. Moment by moment, the relaxation that comes is a natural byproduct, a gift of your attention, not a goal to be achieved. So, begin by finding a comfortable position, lying on your back if possible, with your arms resting by your sides. Allow your eyes to gently close. Take a few slow, deep breaths. With each in-breath, imagine you are gathering a sense of gentle presence. And with each out-breath, release any need to do or to fix anything. Let go of the day that has passed. Let go of any concern for the day to come. Give yourself permission to arrive fully in this moment. In this bed, there is nowhere else you need to be. Now, bring your attention to the physical sensations in your body. Feel the weight of your body pressing down into the mattress. Notice the points of contact: your heels, your calves, your hips, your shoulders, the back of your head. Feel the gentle touch of the blankets on your skin. And now, let's begin our journey. Bring your full, undivided attention all the way down to the toes of your left foot. You don't need to move them or wiggle them. Simply bring your awareness there. as if you were shining a soft, gentle flashlight into that part of your body. What do you feel? You might notice a sense of warmth or coolness. You might feel a slight tingling or the touch of one toe against another. You might feel nothing at all, a kind of numbness. Whatever is there is perfectly fine. There is no right or wrong way to feel. You are simply noticing. Now, allow that soft glow of awareness to expand, to include the sole of your left foot, the arch, the heel resting against the bed. Just feeling, just noticing. Let the awareness move up into your ankle, and then into your lower leg, the calf muscle and the shin bone. If you notice any tension, any tightness in the calf, you don't need to fight it. Instead, you can try breathing into it. As you breathe in, imagine your breath could travel all the way down to your calf, carrying with it a sense of kindness and curiosity. And as you breathe out, imagine the muscle softening, melting, releasing its grip, even if only by 1%. There is no need to force it, just the gentle invitation to let go. Continue this journey of awareness up into your left knee, and then into the large muscles of your thigh, front and back. So often we hold tension here without even realizing it. Just feel what is there. Warmth, coolness, heaviness, lightness. And then, let your awareness expand to include the entire left leg, from the tip of your toes to the top of your hip, feeling it as a single field of sensation, vibrant and alive. Now, gently shift your attention to the toes of your right foot and begin the same journey on the other side, with the same patient, kind curiosity. Notice the sensations in your toes, the sole of your foot, your heel, your ankle. Slowly, let the awareness travel up your right lower leg, breathing into any tension you find, inviting it to soften and release. Let the awareness move through your right knee and up into your right thigh, and then, just as before, let your awareness fill the entire right leg, from toes to hip. For a moment, feel both legs simultaneously, heavy, warm, and resting completely. Now, bring your attention into the pelvic region, your hips and your buttocks resting on the bed. This is an area where we hold deep tension. Let it be heavy. Let it sink into the support beneath you. Then, guide your awareness into your abdomen. The belly is often where we feel our anxiety and fear, without judgment. Just feel what is present there. Is it tight? Is it soft? Can you feel the gentle rise and fall with each breath? If it is tight, you can again breathe into it, offering it a sense of softness and acceptance. You don't need to get rid of the feeling. Just allow it to be held in a spacious, kind awareness. Let your attention drift upward into your chest, the area of your heart and lungs. Feel the gentle rhythm of your breathing from the inside. Feel the steady, faithful beating of your heart. It has been working for you every moment of your entire life. Perhaps you can offer it a silent moment of gratitude, a soft thank you for its tireless work. Let your attention spread across your collarbones and out to your shoulders. This is another great storehouse of tension, the weight of the world we carry. On your next out-breath, see if you can let your shoulders feel heavy, letting them drop away from your ears, releasing their burden down into the bed. From the shoulders, let your awareness flow down both of your arms, through your upper arms, your elbows, your forearms, and into your hands. Bring a precise attention to your hands. Feel your palms, the back of your hands, and each finger and thumb. One by one, notice the feeling of the air on your skin. Then, guide your awareness to your neck and your throat. Gently invite the muscles here to soften. Then bring your attention to your face, an area where we hold so much subtle emotion. See if you can soften the muscles of your jaw. Let your lips rest lightly together. Let your tongue be soft and rest gently in the floor of your mouth. Soften the tiny muscles around your eyes, and soften the space between your eyebrows, a place where we often hold a furrow of worry. Let your entire forehead be smooth and wide. Finally, let your attention rest on the very top of your head, and from here, allow your awareness to expand downwards, to encompass your entire body as one unified field of sensation. Feel your whole body, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. Breathing. As you breathe in, I feel the whole body subtly expand. As you breathe out, I feel the whole body gently release. There is nothing to do, nowhere to go, just resting here. As this breathing body, this practice is a profound anchor. The thinking mind loves to get lost in the abstract realms of yesterday and tomorrow, but the body is always, unfailingly, in the present moment. By dropping your awareness out of the frantic storyline in your head and into the direct, tangible sensations of your body, you tether your mind to the here and now. You interrupt the loops of worry. You create a space of calm. You are building a relationship of kindness and trust with your own physical self. And now, as this guided practice comes to an end, there is nothing more to do. Simply let go of any specific focus. Let your awareness be soft and diffuse. If thoughts come, let them come. If feelings arise, let them arise. Simply rest as you learn to release the tensions held within your muscles and bones. You become more sensitive to the other tensions you carry, the tensions of blame, of resentment, of the stories you tell about your interactions with the world. You have grounded yourself in your body. Now, you can begin to unburden the mind. Having dropped our awareness out of the chaotic world of thought and into the grounding reality of the body, we have found a temporary anchor. We have learned to release the physical tensions we carry. Now, we must turn to the mental and emotional tensions, particularly those that arise from our interactions with others. So much of our sleeplessness is fueled by replaying the day's conflicts, nursing our grievances, and stewing in a sense of righteous indignation. We feel wronged, misunderstood, or attacked, and we carry this heavy burden of blame with us into the night. There is an ancient Taoist parable attributed to the great sage Zhuangzi that offers a key to unlocking this self-imposed prison. It is the story of the empty boat. Imagine a man, alone in his small boat, enjoying the tranquility of a beautiful lake at dusk. The water is still, the air is calm, and a profound sense of peace settles over him. He closes his eyes, savoring the moment. Suddenly, his peace is shattered by a loud thud. Another boat has collided with his. His eyes fly open, and his heart fills with immediate, hot anger. He thinks of the carelessness, the sheer idiocy of the person who has just ruined his perfect solitude and possibly damaged his boat. He begins to shout into the fading light, hurling insults at the fool in the other boat. His blood pressure rises, his fists clench, and his mind is a storm of blame, filled with righteous fury. He stands up to identify the culprit, ready to give them a piece of his mind. And then he sees it. The other boat, the one that crashed into his, is empty. It had simply come loose from its moorings upstream and had been carried by the current, drifting aimlessly until it happened to bump into his. In that single instant of seeing, a profound shift occurs within the man. His rage vanishes. It evaporates completely because it has nowhere to land. There is no one to blame. There is no malicious intent to react to. There is only the impersonal, indifferent reality of the situation. An empty boat, moved by the wind and the water, bumping into his. The external event is the same. His boat is still bumped, but his inner suffering, his anger, has completely disappeared. This simple story holds a transformative secret about the nature of our own anger and resentment. Our suffering in these situations is almost never caused by the event itself. It is caused by the story we instantly create about the event, and at the heart of that story is the belief that there is an intentional, blameworthy person in the other boat. Our anger needs a target. It feeds on the narrative that you have deliberately wronged me. The wisdom of the empty boat invites us to consider a radical possibility. What if most of the boats that bump into us in life are, in fact, empty? The person who cuts you off in traffic is not a villain who woke up this morning with the malicious intent of ruining your day. They are a person lost in their own world of stress, running late for a meeting, distracted by a fight they had with their spouse, their mind 1,000 miles away. Their boat is empty of any intention towards you. The friend who makes an insensitive comment that stings you is most likely not acting from a place of calculated cruelty. They are acting from their own insecurity, their own ignorance, their own unskillfulness, their own unexamined pain. Their boat is empty. The colleague whose mistake creates hours of extra work for you is probably not plotting against you. They are overwhelmed, disorganized, or dealing with personal struggles you know nothing about. Their boat, too, is empty. So why is our first instinct always to assume there is an angry, malicious person steering the other boat? Because the ego, our sense of I, thrives on these stories. The ego loves drama. It loves to cast itself as the righteous victim because it feels important and validated in that role. The story of "look how I have been wronged" is a powerful, if poisonous, source of identity. To see the other boat as empty requires us to do something the ego finds very difficult: to let go of our story, to release our grip on being the injured party. It requires us to abandon the small, bitter satisfaction of blame in exchange for the vast, liberating peace of non-reactivity. This parable is not just a philosophy. It is a powerful practice we can use as a bedtime ritual to dissolve the day's resentments. As you lie here now, gently bring to mind an interaction from your day that left you feeling angry, hurt, or frustrated. It could be a small irritation or a major conflict. See the scene in your mind. Feel the familiar sting of that second arrow, the feeling of being wronged. Now, try a new perception. Imagine the other person in that scenario as an empty boat. See their words or their actions not as a personal attack directed at you, but as the result of their own inner winds and currents, their own fear, their own confusion, their own suffering. This does not mean you must condone their behavior or that you shouldn't set clear boundaries in your life. It is not about becoming a doormat. It is a purely internal practice for your own liberation. You can still take practical steps to address a situation in the external world, but for your own sake, for the sake of your own peace tonight, you can choose to stop drinking the poison of resentment, their anger, their carelessness. Their unkindness belongs to them. It is in their boat. By choosing to see their boat as empty, you refuse to allow their cargo to become your own. You unburden your heart. You choose peace over the toxic pleasure of being right. We can take this profound metaphor one step further. As we look out and see that all the boats that bump into us are empty, moved by impersonal causes and conditions, we can, with the wisdom of anatta, turn our gaze back towards our own boat. And with that clear sight, we realize that our boat is empty too. There is no solid. Separate me here to be the victim. There is just an impersonal collection of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. The event happens, one empty boat bumps into another. The story of me who was wronged and you who did the wrong is an extra layer of fiction. A second arrow we choose to fire. When we see this deeply, the entire foundation for blame and resentment dissolves. It is all just the universe happening impersonal, ownerless, and free. By letting go of these heavy stories, by seeing the world as a sea of empty boats, drifting on the currents of cause and effect, we release the fuel for our anger, our indignation, and our victimhood. And when these noisy, dramatic stories finally fall silent, what is left? In the space created by this release, we can begin to perceive something that was there all along. Hidden beneath the chatter, we can begin to discover a profound, inherent silence, a deep stillness that is the true nature of our mind. Having learned to unburden our hearts from the stories of blame by seeing the world as a sea of empty boats, a new quality of quietness can begin to emerge. When we stop fueling the fires of resentment and indignation, we are left with a space. But often, this space is quickly filled by another kind of noise, the seemingly endless, chaotic chatter of our own minds. We speak of the monkey mind, the mental noise, the inner narrator that never seems to shut up. We lie in bed and feel besieged by this inner turmoil, and we conclude that the very nature of our mind is noisy and chaotic. But what if this is a profound misunderstanding? What if the noise is merely a surface activity, like static on a radio, and that underneath it, the mind's true nature is, and has always been, one of profound and boundless silence? Think of the ocean on a stormy day. Its surface is a churning maelstrom of crashing waves, roaring winds, and flying spray. To someone on a small boat, it would seem that the entire ocean is made of this violent chaos. But if you could dive deep beneath the surface, even just 20 or 30 feet down, the turmoil would vanish. In the great depths, the ocean is always silent, still, and calm, utterly unaffected by the transient weather patterns raging on its surface. Our minds are like this ocean. Our thoughts, emotions, memories, and plans are the waves on the surface, whipped up by the winds of our daily lives. They are natural, energetic, and constantly changing. Our fundamental awareness, that pure, knowing quality of the mind, is like the deep, silent ocean. It is inherently peaceful, vast, and still. The great error of our lives is that we spend all our time on a tiny surfboard, getting tossed and turned by every wave, believing that the surface chaos is the only reality. The practice of deep meditation is learning how to let go of the surfboard and dive into the silent depths of our own being. This begins with a crucial shift in perspective. Thoughts are not the enemy for so many of us, especially when we are trying to sleep. The thinking process itself feels like a tormentor. We are at war with our own minds, trying desperately to force them into submission, to make them be quiet. But this battle is unwinnable, and the struggle itself only creates more waves, more turmoil. The path to peace is not through war, but through wisdom. Thoughts are not a personal failing. They are an impersonal, natural phenomenon, like clouds drifting through the sky. They arise from causes and conditions, and they are not, in their essence, you. The problem is not that the thoughts are there. The problem is that we identify with them, believe them, and get lost in their stories. To understand this distinction, imagine you are sitting in a pitch-black, utterly silent movie theater. This empty, silent space is the natural state of your pure awareness. Suddenly, the projector flickers on, and a movie begins on the screen in front of you. It is an intense drama, full of thrilling car chases, heartbreaking betrayals, frightening monsters, and passionate romances. The soundtrack is loud and overwhelming. As you watch, you become completely absorbed in the story. Your heart pounds during the chase. You feel real anger at the villain's betrayal. You jump in your seat when the monster appears. You have become so identified with the flickering images that you have forgotten you are sitting in a dark theater. You believe the movie is reality, and you suffer accordingly. Now, imagine that, in the middle of the most terrifying scene, you are gifted with a moment of mindfulness. You remember. You think to yourself, "Oh, wait, this is just a movie. These are just patterns of light and shadow on a flat screen. It isn't real." In that instant, what happens to your suffering? It vanishes. You are no longer a victim of the story. You can still watch the movie. You can appreciate the skill of the actors and the beauty of the cinematography, but you are no longer trapped by it. You have woken up from the dream. The final, most profound step of this analogy is to realize your true identity in this theater. You are not the movie. You are not even the audience member who gets lost in the movie. Your true nature is the screen itself. The screen is the silent, empty, receptive awareness upon which the entire movie of your life, every thought, every feeling, every memory, every sensation is projected. Think about the nature of the screen. No matter how violent the battle scene, how fiery the explosion, how tragic the heartbreak shown upon it, the screen itself is never burned, stained, damaged, or changed in any way. When the movie is over and the projector is turned off, the screen remains just as it was before, pristine, is spacious, and silent. This is your true nature. You are the silent, aware space in which the noisy movie of your life takes place. Realizing this, not just as an idea, but as a direct experience, is the ultimate liberation. The thoughts can be chaotic, the emotions can be stormy, but the deep, underlying awareness that knows them all remains untouched and at peace. We can practice tuning into this silent nature. Even now, it begins with shifting our attention. Usually, we are focused on the content of our experience, the sounds, the thoughts. Try a different approach. Listen to the sounds around you right now, the hum of an appliance, à distancier, the sound of your own breathing, but instead of focusing on the sounds themselves, listen for the silence out of which the sounds arise. Notice that every sound is born from silence, exists for a moment, and then dissolves back into silence. The silence is the constant background, the canvas. The sounds are just temporary figures painted upon it. Rest your attention in that background silence. We can do the same with our thoughts. Instead of being carried away by the river of thought, see if you can become interested in the spaces between the thoughts. There is a thought, and then a tiny gap of silence before the next thought arises. Can you notice that gap? Can you rest in it, even for a fraction of a second? You are not trying to create silence. You are simply noticing the silence that is already, always here, underneath the surface noise. It is a shift from being absorbed by the content of the mind to becoming aware of the nature of the mind itself. The true peace that we seek is not a fragile state that we achieve by finally winning the war against our thoughts. It is not something we build. It is something we discover. It is the peace that is revealed when we simply stop fighting. It is the realization of the silent, spacious awareness that has been here all along, patiently waiting for us to notice it. This peace is unshakable because it does not depend on conditions. The movie can be a comedy or a tragedy. The screen does not care. Our thoughts can be pleasant or painful. The silent awareness that witnesses them remains undisturbed. This direct experience of the unconditioned, this freedom from the frantic and often terrifying movie of our lives, has a name in the Buddhist tradition. It is the destination towards which this entire journey has been leading. It is the peace of Nibbana, the final and complete extinguishing of the fires of suffering. It is not a place we go to after we die. It is a reality we can touch, right here and now, in the silent depths of our own mind. We have journeyed to the very heart of the mind, and in its silent depths, we have discovered something remarkable. We have found that our true nature is not the noisy, chaotic chatter of our thoughts, but the silent, spacious awareness that witnesses it all. This experience of a peace that is not dependent on conditions, this unshakable stillness that lies beneath the surface of our lives, is not merely a pleasant feeling or a psychological trick. In the Buddhist tradition, it has a name. It is the aim and culmination of this entire path. It is the peace of Nibbana. The word Nibbana, or Nirvana in its more common Sanskrit form, is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of spirituality. We often imagine it as a kind of heavenly paradise, a beautiful garden where we go after we die. Or, conversely, we fear it is a state of complete annihilation, a snuffing out of our very existence into a grey and empty void. Both of these ideas are misconceptions that miss the profound and practical reality of what Nibbana truly is. The literal meaning of the word Nibbana is to extinguish or to blow out, as one would blow out the flame of a candle. This immediately raises the most important question: what is it that is being extinguished? The Buddha was clear. What is extinguished is not your life, not your joy, not your unique personality. What is extinguished are the three fires that are the root cause of all suffering. These are the fire of greed, our endless wanting and grasping, the fire of aversion, our endless hating and resisting, and the fire of delusion, our fundamental ignorance of the true nature of reality. These three fires are what fuel the whole frantic, exhausting project of the ego. They are what keep us bound to the restless cycle of craving and clinging. Nibbana is the profound and liberating peace that is naturally revealed when these fires of affliction have finally ceased to burn. Imagine an old-fashioned oil lamp. The flickering, dancing flame represents our agitated mind, our state of dukkha. The flame is hot. It consumes fuel, and it is unstable, constantly moving. For this flame to burn, it needs two things: a wick and a supply of oil. The wick is our cherished sense of a separate, solid self, the I that feels it is at the center of the universe. The oil is tanha, the constant, dripping fuel of our craving, our entire spiritual practice. Everything we have explored is a process of wisely dealing with this lamp. It is not about violently snuffing out the flame, which would be an act of annihilation. Instead, it is about understanding how the flame is sustained and gently removing its causes. Through the practice of mindfulness, we become aware of the constant drip of oil, the arising of our cravings. Through wisdom, we see that acting on these cravings is like adding more oil to the lamp. It just makes the fire burn hotter and longer. By learning to let go, by choosing not to feed our greed and our aversion, we stop adding fuel. Through the deep investigation of anatta, we see that the wick, the solid self, is an illusion. It is just a bundle of changing processes. When the fuel of craving is no longer supplied, and when the wick of the illusory self is seen through, the flame does not need to be attacked. It simply, naturally, and peacefully goes out on its own. The heat is gone, the agitation is gone, the frantic burning is over. That coolness, that peace, that is Nibbana. The most beautiful part of this teaching is that Nibbana is not some far-off, unattainable goal reserved for saints in ancient times. It is not a state that you only get to experience after you die. It can be touched, experienced, and known right here and now, in this very life. Every single time you practice letting go, you experience a tiny taste of Nibbana. Every moment you are mindfully aware of a craving and you choose not to be its slave, you are experiencing the coolness of Nibbana. Every time you feel anger arise and you meet it with compassion instead of fueling it with blame, you are extinguishing a small fire, and the peace that follows is a glimpse of Nibbana. Every time you see through one of your own limiting beliefs or let go of the need to be right, you are extinguishing the fire of delusion, and the spaciousness you feel is Nibbana. The spiritual life is not about one giant leap to a final goal. It is about cultivating these small moments of coolness, these little tastes of freedom, again and again, until the coolness becomes the new baseline of your being. This brings us, finally, back to the simple, humble desire that started this entire journey, the wish to fall asleep peacefully. A night of deep, dreamless, restorative sleep is, in many ways, a perfect worldly metaphor for the peace of Nibbana. For those few hours, the fires have gone out, the striving, planning, worrying self has temporarily been extinguished. The relentless drip of craving has ceased. The stories of the past and the anxieties for the future have dissolved. For a time, the mind has returned to its natural state, silent, unburdened, and at peace. The practices we have explored are not just a set of clever techniques to trick an unruly mind into shutting down. They are a way of creating the inner conditions that allow for this natural release to happen, by letting go of our attachments, by softening our heart, by accepting reality as it is. We are actively removing the fuel that keeps the fires of agitation burning through the night. A peaceful night's sleep, then, can be seen as more than just a biological necessity. It is a nightly practice in the art of letting go, a rehearsal for a deeper kind of freedom. It shows us that the peace we seek is not something we need to build or acquire, but is the natural state that is revealed when we simply stop doing all the things that disturb it. And this profound peace is not an end, but a beginning. The person who has deeply touched this freedom, who has extinguished the fires of their own greed, hatred, and delusion, does not simply vanish into a state of blissful inaction. On the contrary, for the first time, they are able to act in the world with true freedom and perfect clarity, no longer burdened by the exhausting, full-time job of protecting and promoting their own ego. All of their energy is now available to be offered in service to the world. Their actions are no longer motivated by fear or desire, but by a boundless compassion and an effortless wisdom. They become the empty boat, moving through the world with grace, creating no new waves of suffering for themselves or others. The end of our own inner war is the true beginning of our ability to be a force for peace in the world. This is the ultimate promise of the path. We began this journey together in the quiet darkness of the night, with the familiar and frustrating experience of a tired body and a restless mind. We followed that simple thread of wakefulness deep into the heart of the human condition, seeking not a sleeping pill, but a profound understanding. We have walked the path laid out by the Buddha, not as a religion, but as a deep psychology of the mind. We looked courageously at the reality of our own disease, the subtle suffering called Dukkha. We identified its true root, not in the world outside, but in the inner thirst and clinging of our own hearts, the force of tanha. We have explored the great illusions that bind us, the illusion of permanence in a world that is always flowing, and the illusion of a solid, separate self in a self that is merely a changing process. We have seen how we create our own suffering with the second arrow of our reactions, and how we become prisoners of our own certainties. But we did not stop at the diagnosis. We gathered the tools for healing. We learned to cultivate the clear, non-judgmental light of mindfulness. We learned to warm the heart with the four sublime states of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and finally, the profound, unshakable balance of equanimity. We have learned to release the ghosts of the past and the phantoms of the future, and to find refuge in the only time that is ever real, the present moment. If there is one essential truth to take with you from this entire journey, let it be: this peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not an achievement to be won. It is not something you get by finally arranging all the pieces of your life perfectly. Peace is your nature. It is the stillness that is already present underneath the noise. It is the vast, open sky that is already here behind the clouds. It is the deep, silent ocean beneath the crashing waves. The spiritual path is not about creating peace. It is about gently, patiently, and kindly ceasing to do all the things that disturb it. So tonight, as you lay your head on the pillow, let go of the idea that you are about to enter a battle. You do not need to fight your thoughts. You do not need to wrestle your anxiety into submission. You do not need to achieve a perfect state of calm. Instead, see if you can try something different, something much softer. Simply give yourself permission to rest. Feel the weight of your body and allow it to be held by the support beneath you. Notice the simple, honest rhythm of your breath, flowing in and flowing out, without any help from you. When thoughts arise, as they surely will, you don't have to believe them. You don't have to engage them in debate. You don't have to follow them down their familiar, anxious pathways. Just see them for what they are: impersonal, impermanent clouds drifting through the vast, peaceful sky of your own awareness. Your only task is to rest as that sky, allowing everything to come and go. There is nothing to fix. There is nothing you need to do. The simple act of letting go, of surrendering to the moment, just as it is the most powerful practice of all. Peace is not out there somewhere to be found. It is right here, in your own courageous and gentle heart. May you be safe, may you be peaceful, and may you have a truly and deeply restful night.